My husband went bungee jumping, but accidentally fell from 100 meters high and was smashed to a pulp. When I rushed to the hospital after receiving the call, there was only a body covered with a white sheet left. Overwhelmed with grief, I cried until I convulsed and fainted, and the baby in my womb miscarried on the spot. When I woke up, he had already been cremated into a jar of ashes. The company's business partners stormed into my hospital room demanding hundreds of millions in penalty fees. That's when I discovered I was his sole heir. To repay the debt, I took menial jobs overseas and often went hungry. Then I saw photos of his tropical island wedding with his first love outside a bridal shop. I got hired as a cleaner to sneak onto the cruise ship, then rushed up to confront them. They threw me overboard right then and there. My body was never recovered. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my husband faked his death. MS, Lynn, I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen died instantly. We didn't even have a chance to administer first aid. Please accept our deepest condolences. Dr. Zhang Chang, Chen Hui's attending physician, let out a long sigh, his face etched with regret. He looked deeply frustrated yet utterly helpless. In my past life, I had taken his words at face value. It wasn't until I spotted him at the wedding that I discovered he was the biological brother of my husband's first love, Zhang Qian. In a comforting gesture, he reached out and patted my shoulder. We won't let you see the body. There isn't a single patch of unbroken skin left. He was completely crushed to a pulp. Let's proceed directly with the cremation. My eyes glazed over as I slid slowly down the wall, crouching with my arms wrapped around my knees. Coming to terms with the fact that I had been reborn, in my past life, I received a call from the hospital, dropped the housework I was doing, and rushed over. But I still didn't make it in time to see Chen Hui one last time. My hand trembled as I clutched the death certificate. Overwhelmed with grief, I fainted on the spot, and I ended up losing the baby I was carrying. When I woke up, there was an urn sitting by my hospital bed. Before I could even process my grief, our business partners stormed into the ward and dragged me off to notarize the inheritance. I signed the documents and pressed my thumbprint like a puppet on strings. When it was over, they informed me I was now liable for hundreds of millions in breach penalties. The company's cash flow vanished without a trace, leaving it an empty shell and forcing it to shut down. Our family home was seized by debt collectors and sold at auction. When I tried contacting my mother-in-law Lu Ping, I found she'd blocked my number. She didn't even show up to her own son's funeral. To repay the debts, I had to take on overseas part-time jobs right after suffering a miscarriage. I survived on nothing but ration crackers day after day. If I hadn't seen Chen Hui and Zhang Qian's wedding promo plastered outside the event company, I'd have died in the dark. I landed a janitor gig to sneak aboard the cruise, then confronted them right during their vows. Next thing I knew, security dragged me off, tied me up, and tossed me in the ship's belly. After the wedding, Chen Hui stood before me and sneered, calling me a useless hen that couldn't even protect her own eggs. To prove his loyalty to Zhang Qian, he personally threw me into the sea. In the end, I was devoured by fish, leaving not even a whole corpse behind. At this thought, my hands clenched my pant legs tightly, my eyes burning with pure hatred. He wanted to put on a show, so I made sure he got the full experience. I pulled myself out of the memories from my past life. Zhang Chang kept trying to comfort me, describing in detail how Chen Hui died. It seemed like he wouldn't stop until I cried myself into a faint. Seeing me unmoved, he broke into a nervous sweat and pulled out the water he'd prepared in advance from his pocket. In my past life, drowned in sorrow, I hadn't noticed, but now, looking closely, I could see the dissolved residue of pills in the water. No wonder just crying back then had sent me into excruciating abdominal agony, worse than death itself. So it was his doing, his drugging, that caused me to miscarry on the spot. Chen Hui really is ruthless. Since he dared to go this far, why should I hold back? I steadied myself and brushed off the man's hand from my shoulder. Taking a deep breath, I said, my husband died a tragic death at the amusement park. This is entirely the park's fault. I can't just let this go. We must call the police. The cremation can wait. What's urgent is letting the police examine the injuries first. Zhang Chang's eyes widened instantly, his hand freezing midair as he was about to hand over the water. Miss Lin, please don't be impulsive. The most important thing right now is to let Mr. Chen rest in peace. Recalling the unbearable agony of the medical abortion in my past life, I shook my head firmly. My husband was always in perfect health when he walked into that amusement park, but he was carried out so badly mangled I barely recognized him. There's no way I'd believe this wasn't caused by their faulty equipment. I'll make sure these unscrupulous operators rot in prison to pay for what they did to my husband. Jean Chang's cold sweat had soaked through his white coat in his panic. He stammered, "Mr. Chen is gone and won't be coming back. If you want revenge for him, at least wait until after the cremation. It's not like that massive amusement park is going anywhere." My face instantly turned frosty upon hearing this. You make a valid point. How could equipment at such a well-established amusement park, operating for so many years, possibly malfunction? He seemed ready to breathe a sigh of relief at my words, but then I continued, my voice trembled with suppressed rage. A grown man wouldn't go bungee jumping alone. There must have been others with him. So why is he the only one left after the accident? I bet the people accompanying him tampered with the equipment when my husband had his accident. We still have time to report this to the police. If we wait until after the cremation, the killer will have fled the country. Jean Chang immediately blurted out anxiously, "No, no, no." He stammered for what felt like an eternity, but couldn't get a single word out. As I was dialing to call the police, he repeatedly fought the urge to snatch the phone from my hand, but each time, my icy glare made him back down. After an internal struggle, he slunk into a corner and sent a few messages. Police arrived at the hospital shortly after receiving the call. I quickly put on a look of utter fury, grabbing the visitor's wrist as I demanded the truth for Chen Hui. My husband has always been in perfect health with no heart conditions. If there wasn't an issue with the amusement park equipment, then someone must have tampered with it. He died so horribly, as his wife. I must get justice for him. The officer comfortingly held my hand in return and spoke with firm conviction. Please try to stay calm. We dispatched a team to that amusement park immediately after receiving the call. We understand how you're feeling, but please don't rush. After speaking, he released my hand and prepared to enter to examine the injuries. Jean Chang lunged forward and blocked the doorway. "No, don't move him. The deceased is gone. Can't you at least let him rest in peace?" My face was full of disapproval as I snapped, "You're just a hospital doctor. I'm calling the police to investigate the truth behind my husband's death. What right do you have to stop me?" He was panting anxiously, stammering and unable to form a complete sentence. "Mr. Chen's death was gruesome, and I really don't want to traumatize you. What's the point of seeing his body now? I've seen many family members develop psychological issues after viewing their loved one's remains. Some needed medication for years due to insomnia. I'm stopping you for your own good." The police officer's expression darkened upon hearing this. "Since the family has made this request, the hospital has no right to prevent it. This is her choice, and I must ask you not to interfere with our investigation, even if it means lifelong insomnia and psychological trauma. I want my husband to pass without any regrets. If anyone dares to harm him, I'll make them pay with their blood, even if it costs me my life." The police pulled Jean Chang aside and then entered the room to gather the tools for the autopsy and examine the injuries. As the cloth stained with dark red was about to be lifted, Jean Chang shouted out in desperation, "Stop, I've already notified the deceased's family. You can't make such a big decision on your own." As soon as she finished speaking, my mother-in-law Lu Ping arrived on the scene, wearing slippers with a dried face mask still on. She charged at me and slapped me hard across the face. The force of her blow nearly sent me tumbling to the ground, and I had to grab the wall to steady myself. "How dare you hide my son's death from me? And you had the audacity to schedule an autopsy behind my back. Who do you think you are? I won't rest until I've made you pay for this." Truth is, I never had any intention of performing an autopsy on him. Once the body shroud is removed, it would reveal that Chen Hui has no wounds whatsoever. My entire plan would go up in smoke after that. Everything I'm doing now is just to force her to show herself. After all, a grand spectacle loses more than half its appeal without heartbroken spectators. Hearing about your son's cremation secondhand is vastly different from witnessing his body consumed by flames with your own eyes. The officer froze, tools in hand, his movements halting abruptly. Only then did Jean Chang breathe a sigh of relief, wiping the sweat from his brow with his sleeve. Tears welled up in my eyes instantly. "Mom, I tried reaching out, but you blocked me, didn't you? I don't know what I did to upset you. You blocking me is one thing, but my husband might have been murdered. I just want justice for him. Are you really going to stand by and let his killer walk free?" Lu Ping's face contorted with rage, her face mask cracking and falling to the ground as her furious expression shifted. She shot me a venomous glare, then turned to the police and said, "I'm the victim's own mother, and I refuse to report this to the police. No one touches my son's body. Get out now, or I'll take this straight to your superiors." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, fighting back tears with red-rimmed eyes. I pleaded, "I'm sorry for wasting your time. My mother-in-law hasn't been well mentally, and she's just struggling to accept my husband's death." but as Chen Hui's wife, I can't let his killer get away with this. Proceed with the autopsy. Once the amusement park investigation wraps up and we identify the suspect through surveillance footage, my mother-in-law will understand why this had to be done. Lu Ping never expected me, usually so docile, to stand my ground so firmly today. She was so enraged on the spot that she was left speechless. Clutching her chest and breathing heavily, once she caught her breath, she rolled up her sleeves, charged right up to me, and started slapping me wildly from both sides. You bitch, my son is already dead, lying there, and you still won't let him be. All you care about is the compensation, isn't it? I knew all along you were no good. It's probably that lover of yours who killed my son. As long as I'm here today, you won't get a single penny. Get the police out of here now, or I'll jump off the hospital roof this instant. She had both hands clamped around my neck, choking me relentlessly. The officers preparing for the autopsy inside were startled by the sudden commotion and rushed out to restrain her. Gasping for air with a hand pressed to my chest, I choked out, I told you my mother-in-law might not be able to handle the shock. If my lover really did this, why would I have called the police? Please perform the autopsy immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, the police officer's walkie-talkie crackled to life. We've retrieved the amusement park surveillance footage, but the aerial shots are too grainy. All we can tell is that he was with a woman. Her identity is still under investigation. Hearing this, the elderly woman slapped her thigh and burst into tears, seizing the moment while the officers were caught off guard. She suddenly broke free and dashed toward the window. She yelled at me furiously, Lin Hui, withdraw your police report right now. Let me take my son to be cremated, or I'll jump off this building right now. If my son is dead, I don't want to live either. I pretended to be panicked and spoke without turning my head. Okay, I won't let them perform the autopsy. Alright, Mom, please don't do this. I'm begging you. The experienced police officer nearby seized the moment as she relaxed, rushing forward in one swift motion to restrain her. After thanking the police, I asked them to look after my mother-in-law for me. I then called the crematorium to make arrangements. Zhang Cheng rushed over in a panic, his face ashen as he tried to stop me. I said coldly, I've already respected your mother's wishes by not calling the police. Now I'm just trying to have my husband cremated. Why are you stopping me? Seeing the stern look on my face, his hand dropped helplessly. While I was on the phone making the appointment, he slipped away to the end of the corridor to tip off his sister. I watched his actions with nothing but scorn and cold detachment in my heart. By the time the car pulled up at the hospital, my mother-in-law had already been confined to a hospital room under watch. The entire corridor echoed with her distraught screams. A psychiatrist from the hospital walked in quickly, holding a sedative. Soon, the old woman fell silent. Zhang Cheng rushed forward to block the crematorium staff, but was forcibly pulled away by the police. His eyes were bulging with pure hatred. He must be regretting drugging Chen Hui into unconsciousness by now, but it's too late for remorse. On the way, I lifted a corner of the red cloth and saw Chen Hui's face, his brow furrowed deeply. I remembered in our past life, he held Zhang Qian while looking at me with utter disgust and revulsion. He even spewed vile insults about my deceased child. The vengeful glee in my heart consumed my reason. I wished I could personally shove him into the incinerator. I knew he could hear me, so I leaned down close to his ear and whispered, Did you think I didn't know about your plan? As your wife, how could I not lend you a hand? You'll be the first to be pushed into the furnace alive and burned to death. Tell me, will your mistress die with you, or take your money and run? A clear liquid welled up in the corner of his eye. I reached out and pressed hard on his eyeball, pushing it deep into the socket. Save your tears, you'll have plenty of chances to evaporate later. The car pulled up to the funeral home entrance, only to be blocked by a Maybach. Zhang Qian stepped out of the car in high heels, her makeup flawless but her eyes burning with rage. She helped her sedated mother-in-law out from the back seat, but the moment the older woman's feet touched the ground, her legs gave way beneath her. Yet she kept spewing venom. Lin Hui, you bitch, give me back my son. I signaled the staff to carry Chen Hui inside first, then texted the police officer I'd just connected with. Only then did I step out of the car and move to block the two furious women. Zhang Qian supported her mother-in-law with one hand while glaring at me with pure hatred in her eyes. Your husband's barely cold in his grave, and you've already thrown your own mother-in-law in the hospital. Are you even human? I bet you're the one who killed Chen Hui. You're just after his inheritance and insurance money. Tears welled in my eyes as I choked out, I'll walk away with nothing, not a single penny, but I'm his wife, and I need to be the one to see him off. I can't trust anyone else with this. All I want is for the police to look into how he really died. What possible ill intent could I have? Well, it's fitting. Today, Mom gets to see her son off one last time too. With that, I turned and went straight inside. Zhang Qian hurried after me. But she couldn't move quickly with her mother-in-law holding her back. In the end, she simply abandoned the old woman. When I entered, Chen Hui had just been pushed into the crematorium. I stood outside the furnace, my gaze dark and unreadable. As the heavy door was about to slam shut, she rushed forward, shoving me aside and positioning herself in front of me. Get away, I won't let you lay a finger on a Hui. I nodded in agreement, covering my mouth to feign overwhelming grief. I turned to the perplexed staff member and said, go ahead, just ignore her. She has nothing to do with my husband. The moment she finished speaking, Zhang Qian slapped me across the face. When I say no, I mean no. Ah Hui has wanted to divorce you for ages. You don't deserve to cremate him. His mother is right outside, and she doesn't acknowledge you as her daughter-in-law either. Hearing this, the staff member hesitated in their movements, ignoring the stinging pain on my face. I immediately dashed to the control panel, determined to take matters into my own hands. Just then, my mother-in-law burst in, carried on the back of Zhang Cheng who had arrived late. Stop, get out of here. Don't you dare lay a finger on my son. Without hesitation, I raised my hand and pressed the ignition button for the incinerator. Zhang Qian lunged at me instantly, shoving me to the ground with brute force and pummeling my torso with relentless blows. A sharp, searing pain shot through my abdomen as warm blood gushed out beneath me. At the same moment, Chen Hui inside the furnace abruptly sat upright. Flames erupted in a violent burst, engulfing his figure completely. Zhang Cheng rushed forward immediately to intervene, but was promptly pulled back by the staff. Once the machine starts, it won't stop until the body is reduced to ashes. My condolences to the family. The mother-in-law collapsed weakly onto the floor, pounding the ground with both hands. What a cursed fate. What kind of daughter-in-law have I brought into this family? She's the death of my son. In a fit of rage, she kept pounding her chest with her fists. Her eyes swept over my struggling expression, and she scrambled up from the ground, rushing toward me. Just as she was about to lay hands on me, the police burst through the front door. Seeing this, I quickly pulled my mother-in-law away. The mother-in-law exploded in fury, screaming, "It's this bitch who killed my son. Aren't you the police? Why aren't you arresting her? You're in cahoots with her." I was pinned to the ground, trapped beneath Zhang Qian who was sitting on top of me, gritting my teeth against the searing pain. I retorted coldly, "Your son died of his own accord. There's a hospital report to prove it. Are you suggesting the hospital killed him, or that they deliberately let a living person burn to death without lifting a finger to save him?" As soon as I finished speaking, a flicker of panic crossed Zhang Qian and Zhang Cheng's faces. My mother-in-law fell silent under my questioning. Only then did the police follow my voice and notice Zhang Qian on top of me. They immediately recognized her as the woman seen with Chen Hui in the amusement park surveillance footage. Just as they were about to take her away for questioning, my mother-in-law urgently spoke up to stop them, pointing at me on the ground. "That woman is no daughter-in-law of mine. She's the real murderer. She only went after my son's inheritance. The one you should be arresting is Lin Hui." I tried to argue, but Zhang Qian pinned my chest down with all her weight. The severe lack of oxygen and the stabbing pain in my abdomen made everything go black, and I passed out. When I came to, I found myself lying in a hospital room. We lost the baby after all. My vacant eyes followed the fore drip, listening to the rhythmic patter of fluid. I couldn't help but wonder, perhaps this was fate's design. A scumbag like Chen Hui doesn't deserve to have children of his own. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes as a fierce argument suddenly erupted outside. It was unfolding exactly as it had in her previous life. The group of partners demanding penalty fees had tracked her down to the hospital. The only difference this time was the police officers stationed outside the hospital room. They couldn't get in. After a moment's thought, I mustered my strength and asked them to let the creditors in. The moment the door opened, a crowd barged in without a word, thrusting contracts with the penalty amounts circled. They straight up dumped it on me and demanded compensation. I picked up a contract from my lap and examined it carefully. I didn't have time to investigate it thoroughly in my past life. Now, thinking back on all the details, I'm filled with suspicion. How could a legitimate company go bankrupt just because its leader ran into trouble? The rest of the team should have been able to carry on business as usual. After reading the delivery deadlines in the contract, it finally dawned on me. Chen Hui's company's bankruptcy and contract breach were clearly premeditated from the start. The delivery schedule in this contract is impossibly tight, and Chen Hui actually signed contracts with 4 different companies for the same batch of goods. It's blatantly obvious he was just trying to make a quick buck and skip town by any means necessary. With the police present, the creditors didn't dare get physical. They just kept hurling insults and demanding I pay up. I let out a cold laugh at their words. Chen Hui and I signed our divorce papers a month ago. I have no claim to his assets now, and his debts are certainly none of my concern. You can't pin this on me. The business partners exchanged glances, then immediately started shouting curses at my hospital bed. Are you fucking kidding us? This is some kind of joke. If you're not responsible for his debts, then who the hell are we supposed to get money from? His goddamn ghost. My calm gaze met the eyes of the one who had spoken. I reminded them. I filed for divorce because I discovered he was cheating during our marriage. He never contributed a single penny to our household, yet he showered his mistress with gold and jewelry. That very mistress has now been arrested on suspicion of intentional homicide and is at the police station. If you're looking for her, go straight to the station. At the mention of police station, they all fell silent, completely deflated, but the penalty fee was no small amount. After a long discussion in the hospital corridor, the group finally decided to head to the police station to find her. To my surprise, the moment we stepped into the police station, my furious mother-in-law started yelling at me until we were forced to leave. After dark, seizing the moment when the officer went to the restroom, she barged into the hospital room and dragged me out just like she did in my previous life. Your mother-in-law says you never even got divorced. Are you fucking messing with me? He then grabbed my hair, gritting my teeth against the sharp pain. I struggled to speak. The divorce papers are at my place. If you don't believe me, come with me to get them. I'll take you there right now. After a long drive, the car finally came to a stop right at our doorstep. The moment I stepped out of the car, I caught my mother-in-law furtively tapping on the keypad of the digital lock. Instantly, I remembered the insurance policy tucked away in the drawer. A chill ran down my spine. They're really squeezing every last drop of benefit from Chen Hui's fake death, leaving me with nothing but crushing debt. I thought she'd lay low for a couple of days, what with her own son just passing away. Seems I underestimated how shamelessly opportunistic she could be. Well then, why should I hold back? Hearing my footsteps, my mother-in-law turned around. Her guilty eyes instantly blazed with fury the moment she saw my face. She immediately started shouting, "You ungrateful wretch. Now that my son's company is failing and he's in debt, you claim you're divorced. When he was alive, you begged and cried not to leave him. A beast like you doesn't deserve to be my daughter-in-law." I sneered and said, "You didn't know your son signed the divorce papers a month ago, did you?" I was pregnant at the time, so I kept putting off signing the papers. Looking back now, I realized that might be why he came up with an even more vicious plan. When my mother-in-law heard this, her eyes instantly darted away. Clearly, she was in on it. I ignored her and walked right past to key in the door code. The moment the door opened, she darted inside, claiming a stomach ache. I went upstairs to find the bathroom, but I knew she was just after that insurance policy. Chen Hui must have planned this fake death and arranged everything in advance. Even my mother-in-law knows exactly where the insurance policy is hidden. I was about to call out to stop them when several business partners snapped at me for wasting their time. Under their threatening glares, I walked to the coffee table and pulled the divorce papers from the drawer. The moment I retrieved them, someone behind me snatched the documents away. The old woman clutched the agreement tightly in her hand, revealing only the corner bearing Chen Hui's signature. The next second, she tore it all to shreds and threw the pieces into the air. As she looked at the confetti-like scraps covering the floor, her face finally showed some relief. All I could do was let out a cold sneer. She thought I was claiming to be divorced just to dodge my debts, but I never had any intention of making the divorce with Chen Hui official from the start. Otherwise, on what grounds could I sue to reclaim the assets he transferred to Zhang Qian during our marriage? I watched her movements with an icy stare. My mother-in-law averted her eyes but snapped, "Don't you dare forge my son's signature. You think a fake agreement can get you off the hook? Not a chance." With that, she turned and walked out, policy in hand. She left a room full of business partners exchanging bewildered looks. I repeatedly promised them a proper resolution, talking until I was hoarse before they gradually dispersed. I dragged my exhausted body back to the hospital. The hallway was packed with police officers. Seeing that I was unharmed, they all breathed a sigh of relief. The person in charge spoke up, "I'll arrange for rotating shifts later to prevent them from coming back." Hearing this, I shook my head and declined his offer. Now it's my turn to take the initiative. As soon as my condition stabilized, I checked out of the hospital and called the insurance company. I confirmed that my mother-in-law had collected all the compensation and transferred the funds to Zhang Qian's account. Only then did I start looking for a lawyer to file a lawsuit. On the day we received the lawyer's letter, my mother-in-law showed up with a bunch of bizarre relatives and smashed our front door to pieces. They tore into me with a torrent of abuse. nothing in the house was spared. The room that was once so warm and cozy was left in complete disarray. Clutching my lower abdomen with scornful eyes, I dialed the police and spoke in an icy tone. Go ahead and smash it. Every piece was bought with your son's blood and sweat. These are all his remaining belongings. My mother-in-law froze mid-action, her eyes blazing crimson with rage. You're the one who killed my son. I'll make you pay with your life and bury you alongside him. The police arrived at the house at that moment and took the whole group in for questioning. The room finally fell quiet. I booked a hotel room and stayed there for the night. After giving her statement, my mother-in-law called countless times. I rejected every call, and finally blocked her number out of sheer frustration. When the court convened the next day, Zhang Qian, the defendant, failed to show up. During my 2-week hospital stay, she had sold Chen Hui's company at a rock-bottom price and declared bankruptcy. It was only then that I discovered she was the company's legal representative in name. She had squeezed every last drop of value from the company. Yet those business partners only come after me when demanding debt repayment. Chen Hui's death had no impact whatsoever on Zhang Qian. She's been living the high life with the money from selling the company, getting facials, perms, and looking even more radiant than before. Zhang Cheng also resigned from the hospital after the incident. The two of them rented a luxury villa in the suburbs. In the city, only my mother-in-law remained, still causing trouble with me over Chen Hui's death. What's laughable is that even now, seeing the empty seats, my mother-in-law's face was still full of triumphant glee. I saw it all, and couldn't help but feel scornful inside. She still hasn't seen through Zhang Qian's true colors. Little does she know she's the real clown in this situation. The mother-in-law stared down at her phone, fingers scrolling across the screen. Her facial expression shifted from initial delight to confusion, finally settling into furious despair. Something felt off. She was just Zhang Qian's pawn. When Zhang Qian didn't answer her calls, she tried contacting her brother instead, but Zhang Cheng's number was out of service too. My mother-in-law finally began to panic. I sat calmly in the chair opposite, watching her face contort with anxiety. A vengeful satisfaction spread unchecked through my heart. After what felt like ages, her calls still went unanswered. In a panicked sweat, they decided to call the police. As soon as the call connected and they explained the situation, the police informed them they had been tracking Zhang Qian's whereabouts since early that morning, and they had just received an update. Zhang Qian and her companion had been intercepted at the airport and were now on their way back. Hearing this, the mother-in-law finally breathed a sigh of relief. As soon as Zhang Qian appeared in the courtroom, the mother-in-law immediately stood up, rushed over to her, and began questioning her in a low voice. But the arm that had been placed on Zhang Qian's shoulder was coldly shaken off. All the pent-up frustration and anger the mother-in-law had been holding in suddenly erupted. Just as she was about to make a move, Zhang Cheng saw right through her intentions and shoved her aside. Get lost, you old hag, stay out of my way. Stunned by his menacing and terrifying expression, the old woman froze in place. It took her a moment to process what had happened. I couldn't understand why my former comrade-in-arms from the same camp suddenly turned against me at this moment. Zhang Qian walked to the defendant's seat under Zhang Cheng's protection. Despite being the accused party, she now held her chin high and faced me with an expression of certain victory. Don't think calling the police to bring me back will do any good. It's already too late. How dare a cast-off slut like you challenge me? A contemptuous smirk played on her lips. The mother-in-law's face was ashen as she muttered in disbelief. What does this mean? Have my son and I been played for fools? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Zhang Qian is clearly carrying my grandson. Zhang Cheng stood beside her and immediately spat on her upon hearing this. Shut up. How dare that deadbeat even deserve this? What a joke. Qian could manipulate him as easily as playing with a dog, carrying his child. Absolutely ridiculous. The light in mother-in-law's eyes instantly faded upon hearing those words. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, she stood frozen in place, trembling hands fumbling for a medicine bottle from her robe and gulping it down. Zhang Qian glanced down at the amount I demanded she repay and couldn't help but laugh. Lin Hui, you were daydreaming that Chen Hui loved you when you married him, and now that he's dumped you, you still haven't kicked the habit. 100 million. Why don't you just go rob a bank? What evidence do you have? Making baseless accusations. I could sue you for extortion. I looked at her contemptuous expression, let out a cold laugh, and began to speak. When Chen Hui transferred money to you, we hadn't even signed the divorce agreement, let alone the fact that I never endorsed it. The assets he diverted to you during our marriage were joint property. Now that he's passed away, those have become part of my personal inheritance. Tell me, don't I have every right to reclaim what's rightfully mine? To my surprise, her face twisted into a mask of pure contempt. Your husband's sending me money. I have a boyfriend, why would I need his transfers? That man I dumped a decade ago wasn't worth my time when he was single. You think I'd want him after he married? Only someone like you would treat that trash like treasure. Following her suggestive gaze, I spotted Zhang Chong among the seated guests. A soft chuckle escaped her lips. If Chen Hui saw this, he'd probably rise from his deathbed just to slap her twice across the face. At the mention of boyfriend, the mother-in-law's dazed eyes slowly lifted. She immediately snapped back to reality and started cursing. You bitch, what did you just say? Isn't he your own brother? Have you been lying to me all this time? Zhang Qian let out a light chuckle. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't just say whatever you want. I'm not married, so what's wrong with dating? None of your damn business. You're already halfway in the grave and still meddling in your son's ex-girlfriend's life. Wake up, your son is already 6 feet under. At that moment, her entire demeanor was completely different from the meek and submissive person she had been before. I watched with bitter irony in my heart. So this is the woman Chen Hui faked his death to elope with, in our previous life. Zhang Chong's true identity was never exposed, probably because Chen Hui was still useful to them, still making money for that wretched pair. Now that they've squeezed every last drop of value from Chen Hui, the two of them no longer bothered to hide their true colors. The mother-in-law was so enraged she could barely breathe, nearly fainting on the spot. Zhang Qian sneered coldly, stop the act. If you want to join your son, just go jump off a building. I'm not your idiot daughter-in-law. I wouldn't even glance at you if you died. That prenatal report I showed you earlier, that's my boyfriend's child. Your son isn't even worthy. The moment she finished speaking, the mother-in-law completely lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. The staff nearby were so alarmed that they immediately called for an ambulance and had the person taken away. Zhang Qian watched everything unfold with visible impatience. Hurry up, she snapped. If you can't produce any evidence, I've got things to do. I have a flight to catch for my honeymoon abroad. She was absolutely convinced I couldn't provide any proof of Chen Hui's money transfer, all because Chen Hui treated her so exceptionally well, while I, as his wife, wasn't even allowed to touch his phone. The next moment, I pulled the printed bill from my bag and laid it in front of Zhang Qian. Seeing her face turn pale, Zhang Chong immediately scrambled down from his seat. Their eyes met in panic as they saw the clear numbers on the bill. They never expected me to retrieve the phone from Chen Hui's body before his cremation. To be honest, I'm somewhat relieved that Chen Hui's feelings for Zhang Qian were genuine. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to unlock his phone using her birthday as the passcode. Even his mobile banking login password was set to her birth date, with ease. I obtained evidence of Chen Hui transferring marital assets behind my back. To confirm his infidelity, I even printed out their flirtatious chat logs. Zhang Qian repeatedly asked him to delete the records, but Chen Hui only gave lip service. He couldn't bring himself to actually do it. Now, ironically, it's made it easier for me to protect my rights. Zhang Qian's lawyer was sweating bullets, unable to string together a complete sentence. Meeting her furious gaze, he could only keep apologizing. He insisted he had done everything he could. The judge immediately announced the verdict, ordering Zhang Qian to return all the funds she had received. At those words, she flew into a blind rage. He actually tried to charge toward the judge, but people nearby held him back, yet he kept shouting defiantly. He transferred the money voluntarily. Every transaction was marked as a voluntary gift. Are you fucking blind? Why should I pay it back? He gave it to me willingly. You have no right to claim it back for him. I played along with his little charade. I earned this. Zhang Chong, still somewhat lucid, held her back with a calculating glint in his eyes. I sent the court victory documents to all our partners, and only then did they breathe a sigh of relief. With the compensation secured, their previous hostility toward me vanished. To my surprise, they even began showing me sympathy, with many offering words of comfort. After a brief word of thanks, I left the courthouse. I hired someone to tidy up the house, barely restoring it to its former state. I then reached out to the factory Chen Hui had previously worked with and had them resume production. Even if we only fulfill the order for one of the 4 contracts, it's better than nothing. I have no idea where my mother-in-law heard the news, but she actually showed up at our house again. This time, she came alone. I thought maybe she still had a shred of conscience left, that she felt some remorse and wanted to apologize after seeing Zhang Qian for who she really is, but to my surprise, the moment she stepped inside, she had this arrogant look on her face, plopped down on the sofa, pulled out a bank card, and slammed it right in front of me. Didn't you win the lawsuit? That's my son's hard-earned money. You better give me at least 80%. just wire the money to my account. And I might let slide the fact that you got my son killed, otherwise, don't think I'll keep my mouth shut about your abortion. Who knows if your future men would want a woman like you." Her shamelessness and greed hit a new low, surpassing anything I thought possible. "You know damn well all the money is going toward the penalty fees, not a single cent is coming your way." She slammed the coffee table so hard it sounded like thunder. "Stop the act. I know you've stashed some for yourself. Give me half at the very least." Her audacity made me burst out laughing right then and there. I pulled out my phone and showed her the call log from my recent conversation with the police. "You should be going after Zhang Qian right now. She just bought a plane ticket and is about to flee. If she gets away, you won't see a single cent." My mother-in-law stared wide-eyed at the message on my phone, her eyes turning bloodshot. Without saying another word, she bolted out the door. An hour later, evidence of her and Chen Hui's staged death plan was leaked online. It specifically detailed how Zhang Chang, as a doctor, violated medical ethics by helping his son fake his death, which ultimately led to his son being cremated alive. The moment the information went public, the police showed up to investigate. The case escalated from a financial dispute to homicide. The entire police force was deployed to seal off all exits, with the heaviest presence stationed at the airport. Zhang Qian and her companion were apprehended just before they could board the plane. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, they were left speechless and unable to offer any explanation. Their only future now is a prison sentence. All funds remaining in Zhang Qian's account were frozen. The portion transferred overseas is also being recovered. A week later, I finally received the full compensation. After transferring money to several partners, I settled the final payment with the factory. The quality is even better than what was specified in the original contract. The partner who had previously breached the contract immediately agreed to sign a new deal with me after seeing the samples. I've set up a small studio and am ready to start from scratch. My mother-in-law initially wanted to come ask for money after hearing the news, but online discussions ended up dragging her into the controversy as well. Over 50 and having survived that vicious online bullying, I can barely keep my own head above water now. Perhaps it's my departed son watching over me from beyond. From now on, I'll build a good life on my own terms. Everything's moving in the right direction. Story 2. After my rebirth, the first thing I did was to cancel my engagement with Pei Yan. I changed my college application choices and no longer aimed to attend the university he was studying at. In my past life, I lived solely for him, yet, I never knew that he could never let go of his first love. When he was in the late stages of stomach cancer, his only wish was to be truly married to his first love. So, in this life, I will grant him that wish. Just before the deadline to submit university applications, I changed my top choice to Southern Province University. Not only did I remove the originally preferred Capital City University from my top choice, but I also deleted all schools located in the capital city. My class teacher looked at me in surprise. "Nan Shuang, wasn't Capital City University your top choice?" I shook my head. Capital City University was never really my top choice. It was only because Pei Yan studied there. Wherever he was, that was where I wanted to be. To follow him, I had targeted Capital City University since my first year of high school. I worked hard for him and even applied to almost every college in the capital city to ensure I could stay close. But now, I no longer wanted to go. I submitted my application in the final minutes and smiled at my teacher. "Teacher Lee, it's too cold in the north, I prefer warmer cities." She patted my shoulder. "Southern University is also a good choice." At that moment, my phone rang. It was Grandpa Pei. "Little Xuan, where are you? Ah Yen is about to have a holiday and he's asking if there's anything you want. He can bring it back from the capital city for you." I answered, "No need, Grandpa." Yes, Pei Yan would also be on holiday soon. In my previous life, right after I was admitted to Capital University, Grandpa Pei couldn't wait to throw a party and announce to everyone our engagement. Pei Yan and I were engaged from an early age. After my parents died, I was raised by my grandfather. When he was seriously ill at the age of 10, he sought out his old army buddy, who was Grandpa Pei. On his deathbed, he entrusted me to the Pei family and then passed away. They had arranged our marriage when they were comrades in arms. Thus, outsiders often said that I was a child bride raised by the Pei family. Because of this engagement, I closely followed in Pei Yan's footsteps, but I never knew that this was never what he wanted. In my previous life, right after graduating from university, I married Pei Yan and soon had a child. Meanwhile, Pei Yan continued his studies, eventually becoming a professor at the university. I was forced into the role of a housewife, spending my days taking care of the home and teaching our child. Many people thought that I, a woman without a career, was not a match for the highly educated and refined Professor Pei. Even when our son faced problems, he would only consult Pei Yan. He always said, "Dad, you're so brilliant. How could you marry someone as dumb as Mom?" Pei Yan never told him that I also graduated from Capital University. He would only say, "Your mother gave up her career for you." My son would just sneer, "I don't need her. She hasn't contributed anything to our family." At that time, I thought it was just childish talk and turned around to cook and do laundry for them. But as my son grew older, he relied on Pei Yan even more. He always thought I was foolish and not presentable. He would only invite Pei Yan to parent-teacher meetings, and everyone envied him for having a professor as a father. For school family activities, he would only want Pei Yan to attend, even preferring Pei Yan's assistant to fill the role of the mother. I once asked him why he was unwilling for others to meet his mother. The disdain in his eyes hurt me. "You're so foolish. I'm afraid you'll hold us back and make my classmates laugh at me." That time I was very angry. And I rummaged through old boxes to find my dusty diploma to show him. "Peiziyu, look carefully. Your mother also graduated from Capital University. Mom also graduated from Kyoto University. She's not worthless." He was frightened by my hysterical demeanor and kept his distance. "Mom, you're so scary." As soon as Pei Yan returned home, he saw our mother and son confrontation. He took our son back to his room and then came over to comfort me, gently patting my back. "Nanchuang, he's just a child. Why are you picking a fight with a child?" "Yes, he is just a child. Even the flesh that fell from my body after carrying him for 10 months degrades me to nothing. Outsiders even mock me for not being a match for Pei Yan. But Pei Yan, he never spoke a word for me. I never understood why he agreed to marry me and take responsibility for me, yet always seemed like he didn't love me, until the year Pei Yan turned 50. Everything became clear. He was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer. And I felt like the sky was falling. Peiziyu was still studying for his doctorate and had just started dating his girlfriend. Only I could take care of Pei Yan. I curled up on the hospital bed every day, never daring to fully fall asleep at night. I was afraid something might happen to him. On many nights, he cried like a child, holding my hand and saying, "Nanchuang, it hurts so much, everywhere." Seeing him in pain, I was in pain too, when his condition was at its worst. Pei Yan was completely dependent on others for daily life, even needing help with his excretions. Peiziyu visited a few times, each time furrowing his brows and quickly leaving due to discomfort. Only I cleaned up after him without complaints, changing his clothes and bedding. The highly respected professor had become helpless, several times contemplating suicide, but I always stopped him. He told me more than once, "Nanchuang, you are the only person in this world who truly cares for me." I thought that he still had me in his heart. However, after the hospital issued the third critical illness notice, Pei Yan asked me to find someone. That person was his first love, He Chu-Shue, but He Chu-Shue had gone abroad early on, and they had lost contact. I went through Pei Yan's classmate records, contacted many of his classmates and teachers, and even found He Chu-Shue's elementary school teacher's contact information. Finally, I learned from that teacher that she had returned to the country long ago and was now living alone. That was the first time I met He Chu-Shue, who, despite being middle-aged, was still stylishly dressed. Unlike me, who had spent half my life toiling for the family, looking disheveled, she entered Pei Yan's hospital room, and they talked alone for a long time. When she left, it was clear that there was a new light in Pei Yan's eyes. Lying on the hospital bed, he called me and our son over and solemnly announced a decision. "Nanchuang, I want to marry Chu-Shue. It's my final wish." I stood there, too shocked to speak, looking at my son. His expression was normal. Clearly, they had already made this decision in private. At that moment, I felt like the first half of my life was a joke. I firmly refused to divorce, but was scolded by my son. "Mom, Dad was trapped by your marriage contract back then and couldn't pursue Aunt He. Now he just wants to be a real husband to Aunt He before he dies. Are you going to stop him? How can you be so selfish?" I stared blankly at my son, who had grown mature, and suddenly his face seemed so unfamiliar. As a child, Peiziyu still looked a bit like me, but as he grew older, the more I resembled Pei Yan. He said that Pei Yan was trapped by that marriage arrangement, and am I not trapped in this damned marriage arrangement too? From the moment I moved into the Pei family, they told me that I was to marry Pei Yan in the future. My heart and eyes were filled only with him, unable to see anyone else. What finally overwhelmed me was Peiziyu's words, "If you don't agree with Dad, don't blame me for not recognizing you as my mom." I didn't want this. I had toiled for the Pei family all my life, only to end up deserted by everyone. The moment I received the divorce certificate, I became very confused. My son and He Chu Shui, pushing Pei Yan in his wheelchair, happily obtained their new marriage certificate. Pei Yan, over 50, held the marriage certificate close to his chest as if it were a treasured possession. I remembered the day we got our certificate. He didn't even smile for the photos, and after receiving the certificate, he just glanced at it and put it in the drawer. So, the difference between loving and not loving is really huge. Pei Yan even celebrated his wedding with great fanfare. That day, he looked remarkably spirited, showing no signs of illness. He finally fulfilled his dream of marrying his first love in front of everyone. Everyone praised their fairy tale love story, unconcerned about me. Feeling I was unworthy, even my son said, "Mom, look how happy Dad is now. This is the happiest I've seen him." The day after the wedding, Pei Yan once again was admitted to the ICU and did not make it through this time. Perhaps his lifelong wish fulfilled, he passed away peacefully. As his wife, He Chu Shui inherited most of his estate. Right after Pei Yan's funeral, she went on a world tour, sharing her life and became known as the carefree grandma among netizens. Pei Ziyu is planning his marriage and asked me to pay for his wedding house. He said that I took half of Pei Yan's wealth during the divorce, and as a mother, it was my duty to buy him a house. I ignored him, as I had already donated the money to charity. I regret realizing all this so late. Treating a piece of char siu as a treasure. Upon learning this, Pei Ziyu furiously vandalized my home. He harshly said, "You can forget about me taking care of you in your old age." He was wrong. I never expected him to take care of me. I poured out the remaining pills at home. In fact, after giving birth to Pei Ziyu, I suffered from postpartum depression. Professor Pei was busy and hardly ever home. Naturally, he never noticed my depression. Pei Ziyu also didn't know that I had already purchased my own burial plot. I clearly realized that I had lived a failed life. I just didn't expect that heaven would give me another chance to start over. This time, I will stay away from Pei Yan. Returning to the Pei household, Grandpa Pei greeted me with a warm smile. Perhaps in my past life, the only person who was kind to me was Grandpa Pei. He never treated me as an outsider, always treating me like his own granddaughter. When I was giving birth to Pei Ziyu, Pei Yan was busy with work and never visited the hospital. At that time, Grandpa Pei sensed something was wrong. He said if Pei Yan didn't treat me well, I could leave him at any time. But looking at my son sucking his thumb in my arms, I couldn't harden my heart to leave. He saw my reluctance and occasionally reprimanded Pei Yan. Pei Yan listened to him, started coming home more often, and showed more concern for me. But Grandpa Pei passed away early. And without his supervision, Pei Yan reverted to his old ways. So, while playing chess with Grandpa, I spoke up, "Grandpa, let's call off my marriage arrangement with Pei Yan." Grandpa Pei looked at me unexpectedly. "Xiao Shuang, weren't you always saying you'd only marry Pei Yan?" he asked. I smiled. I was naive as a child, but now that I've grown up, I've realized I don't like him. He adjusted his reading glasses and sighed. "Although I don't know what happened between you and Ian. Since you say so, I'll listen to you." Finally, he added, "If you can't be my granddaughter-in-law, then just be my granddaughter." Okay, I nodded. I was well aware of Grandfather Pei's affection for me and knew that even if I wasn't with Pei Yan, I would still treat him like a real grandfather. After the divorce, I felt a great sense of relief. On the day Pei Yan returned, I was working a summer job at a milk tea shop. In my previous life, I had clung to him during this vacation. But now I wanted to avoid him as much as possible. Hearing a familiar voice ordering, I realized it was Pei Yan. I avoided his gaze and handed him his milk tea as if nothing was unusual. He chuckled and asked why I was pretending not to recognize him. He then pulled out a unicorn toy from behind him. "I got this for you from Universal Studios. You like the Minions movie, right? It's a character from the film." In the past, I would have happily accepted it and been delighted all night. No matter what Pei Yan gave me, I used to adore it. Without even a glance, I said, "Pei Yan, I don't like the Minions." A flicker of embarrassment crossed his handsome face. He must have remembered then. It was not me who liked the Minions. I had seen many Minions elements on He Chu Shui's social media in my previous life. Her keychain even had Minions on it. The gift he brought me must have been a convenient pick while he was out with her. Pei Yan took back the toy and pulled out a brooch and a pair of earrings from his pocket. The brooch was shaped like a rose, and the earrings were pink. He asked again, "Do you like this brooch? Or perhaps the earrings? Do you like any of them?" I shook my head and dismissed him. "I don't like any of them. Please don't bother me while I'm working." Pei Yan never really knew my preferences. he didn't know I didn't like roses or the color pink. I remember after our marriage, one of his students invited us to take a marriage quiz. He knew nothing about what I liked, he couldn't even guess, yet, I remembered every one of his preferences. He failed the test, not even reaching the passing score, and he showed no remorse, instead blaming the student for making tricky questions. The outcome of our relationship had been clear in that score, yet I was completely oblivious. When I finished work, Pei Yan came to pick me up. He asked how I wanted to spend my birthday. This must have been another task assigned by his grandfather. I looked up and told him, "Pei Yan, you don't have to spend it with me." A flash of confusion passed through his eyes. "Nanshuang, what's wrong with you? You've been acting strange since I came back. I promised grandfather I'd spend your birthday with you. How about at the Yunqing Hotel? I remember you love their seafood." I casually agreed. After all, it didn't matter to me whether or not he spent my birthday with me. The admission letter arrived. Pei Yan was about to help me get it, but I squeezed past him first. He looked at me, puzzled. "Nanshuang, why won't you let me help you?" Of course, it was because I was afraid he would see that I had changed my college preference. I didn't show it to grandfather either, and locked it away like a treasure in my suitcase. I set the date for the college registration in my planner. In a month and a half, I would be free from Pei Yan. Lately, I felt that you've been acting strange. Are you avoiding me on purpose? Hearing his voice, I quickly turned off my phone. In the previous life, when I was clinging to him, he became impatient and pushed me away, saying, "Gu Nanshuang, can you stop bothering me? If it weren't for grandfather's sake, I would have driven you out a long time ago." Later, when he found out I was sad, he bought me a small cake to appease me. "Nanshuang, I didn't mean what I said, but I also need some personal space." Now that I've stopped seeking him out, he seems uncomfortable with it. Soon, it was my birthday. On the way to the hotel, Pei Yan took a phone call. He looked tense, responding on the phone, "Don't worry, I'm here." After hanging up, he pulled the car over and turned to me. "Nanshuang, something came up suddenly. You go ahead by taxi." I casually acknowledged and obediently got out of the car. At the hotel, I ordered the most expensive dishes. After all, grandfather Pei said tonight's bill was on Pei Yan. When we were halfway through the meal, Pei Yan finally arrived. He handed me a birthday gift, slightly apologetic. "Sorry I'm late. Happy birthday, Nanshuang." The gift was a diamond necklace. In my previous life, I treasured it, wearing it every day. I remember the first time I met He Chushue. She pointed to my necklace and said with a laugh, "After all these years, why are you still wearing that necklace?" I must say, I have good taste. Pei Yan almost chose a different one, but I strongly advised against it. I couldn't listen to her anymore. My mind fixated on one thought. The gift I treasured was also chosen with another woman. I accepted the gift without even looking at it and tossed it into my bag. Pei Yan was taken aback. Normally, I would have opened the gift immediately. But before he could inquire further, his phone vibrated again. He excused himself with an apology, and I remained indifferent. When he returned, even grandfather Pei couldn't stand it. "You said you would accompany Nanshuang for her birthday, yet you left her on the road halfway, and kept her waiting while you took calls. No wonder Nanshuang says she doesn't want to marry you." Pei Yan was stunned. "Nanshuang, did you really say that?" I did not confirm or deny, simply stating I was tired and wanted to go home. I got up and left. Pei Yan chased after me, persistently grabbing my wrist. "You've been acting weird since I came back. Are you upset that I've been neglecting you?" I admit, I was wrong. I've been busy preparing for a competition, but I'll make it up to you when I'm free. "Okay." I found it laughable. If I am not mistaken, both calls were from He Chushue. She stayed in the capital to work, harassed by a male colleague, and thus she called him. He didn't know that I heard everything clearly. Seeing that I remained silent, Pei Yan softened his tone. "Nanshuang, don't be so cold towards me. I know those were just your jokes. I don't take them seriously." I coldly pulled away from him. "Pei Yan, what makes you think I will always like you?" In my last life, he took advantage of my feelings for him, repeatedly leaving me and hurting me. It took me half a lifetime to realize that he didn't love me. Now that I'm letting go, why is he panicking? After that day, Pei Yan unexpectedly became the one who clung to me. Wherever I went, he followed, and he would even hang up the phone the moment it rang. Even the owner of the milk tea shop started gossiping about our relationship. I said, "He's just someone unimportant." The owner just smiled and said nothing. One day, I had an argument with a parent. Her son had been caught on camera stealing another customer's milk tea. Stubbornly, the parent refused to admit it and even tried to throw a milk tea at me from the table. Luckily, Pei Yan was there to pick me up from work and quickly intervened. using his tall stature to shield me. If you lay a hand on her, I will call the police. The woman, seeing Pei Yan, shrank back and tried to sneak away with her son. Unexpectedly, the next moment, the boy suddenly ran over and pushed me hard. Caught off guard, I fell and hit my head sharply against the corner of the table. A sharp pain surged through my forehead, and I felt a warm liquid. Pei Yan immediately called for help to restrain the mother and son and called the police. Then, he scooped me up and rushed me to the hospital. Throughout, his worried expression seemed genuinely sincere. I had once cherished the warmth of his embrace, even though he clearly didn't like me. Why was he always so kind to me, leading me to immerse myself in the illusion that he loved me too? Pei Yan began to care for me diligently. It was mandated by grandfather Pei. Concerned about scarring, Pei Yan had the doctor prescribe the best ointment available. He even said, even if it scars, it doesn't matter, you'll still look good, it won't affect anything. I remember in my past life, when I gave birth to Pei Ziyu through a cesarean section, Pei Yan was too busy with work to come. Recovery from the cesarean was slow, and he had no time to care for me. After giving birth to Pei Ziyu, our time together dwindled even more. We hardly found time alone even when we managed to send our son to stay with grandfather Pei for a few days, but when he lifted my clothes and saw the scar on my stomach, he suddenly fell silent. Back then, there was a faint disgust in his eyes. I understood what that meant, buttoned up my clothes, and said I would sleep in the guest room. His disgust was never about the scar, it was about me with the scar. By the third day of Pei Yan taking care of me, He Chu Shui couldn't sit still anymore and traveled a long distance to find him. I had just had my bandages removed, and Pei Yan was changing my dressing. When I looked up, I saw He Chu Shui standing at the door, staring at him. No wonder she still looked so good even as she aged, confident, radiant, and with bright, expressive eyes when she was young. It's no wonder Pei Yan liked her so much. Seeing her, Pei Yan became flustered and almost knocked over the medicine bottle. He Chu Shui, jealous, hooked her arm around his shoulder and said, "No wonder you haven't been answering my calls these past few days. You've been busy taking care of this little sister." He awkwardly responded, "Chu Shui, don't misunderstand. Grandfather asked me to take care of her." "Yeah, right. Everyone knows your family raised a child bride, and it's her, right? She does look pretty good. You two match well," she said sarcastically. Pei Yan took her outside, trying to explain that he only saw me as a sister. The countdown on my memo app went off. It reminded me that in 10 days, I would be completely free from Pei Yan. The registration day for Nan University and Jing University was the same, so Pei Yan never suspected anything. The day before registration, Pei Yan helped me pack. "Nan Shuang, the climate in Jing City is dry. Bring more moisturizing products, though you can also buy some after you arrive in Jing City. The cafeteria at Jing University is quite good. The area has many restaurants, and there are plenty of options if you like spicy food. Our school is quite large. Once you arrive, I'll accompany you to buy an electric scooter, so it will be more convenient for you to get around." Pei Yan chattered nonstop while organizing things. I already knew everything he talked about. Over the past 2 years, I had secretly visited his school to see him. I also knew that he liked to play basketball on Wednesday afternoons when he was off. There were always many girls cheering for him, and the line to bring him water was long. He enjoyed eating Chongqing noodles at the third cafeteria. I had tried them a few times with him, and they were so spicy that my nose ran. He also liked to spend 2 hours in the library every weekend. I secretly read every book he borrowed, even the obscure philosophical ones, forcing myself to digest them. Pei Yan didn't know that I had quietly noted everything about him. He thought I applied to Jing University because of our marriage arrangement or because of grandfather Pei's wishes, but in truth, I did it to be close to him. Now, listening to him, I felt somewhat distracted. He asked me, "Nanshuang, shall we head to Jing City together tomorrow?" I replied indifferently, "No need, stay a few more days with grandfather." Pei Yan insisted on taking me to the airport. All the way, he kept reminding me to be careful and to wait for him at Jing University. Sensing something, he asked nervously, "You will wait for me at Jing University, right?" It wasn't until he saw me pull out a plane ticket to Nan Province and firmly grasped my wrist that his face showed disbelief. "Nanshuang, didn't you apply for Jing University? Isn't that what you've always wanted?" I pulled away from his grip, my expression cold. "What does it matter to you where I go?" He was stunned, seemingly not expecting my cold response. "I don't know what I did to upset you, but you shouldn't gamble with your future over a grudge." "Pei Yan, are you really that important?" I almost laughed in frustration. "I'm not a study genius." He didn't know how hard I worked to get into Jing University, and it wasn't even the major I wanted. Previously, I was willing to do anything to follow him, honestly. Following him might have ruined my future. The moment I boarded the plane, I felt an unprecedented sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I could study the major I liked and live for myself. The plane landed, and my phone lit up with hundreds of missed calls and messages, all from Pei Yan. He demanded to know why I didn't consult him about calling off the engagement and why I changed my university preferences. I was puzzled. By calling off the engagement, he was free. Shouldn't he be happy? Now he could be with He Chushiwe without any guilt about our engagement or my feelings. Isn't that better? His messages were too bothersome, so I silently blocked him. I quickly adapted to life at Nan University, integrating into new circles and making many new friends. At an early semester mixer, my roommate and I performed a girl group dance. It was my first time dancing in front of people, and we had practiced for several days. I had always wanted to learn dance but had no time due to my relentless study schedule for Jing University. In my past life, I wanted to learn too, but Pei Yan had dismissed it as a waste of money. Later, I found out that He Chushiwe was a dancer. She had her own dance troupe, and during the first few years of our marriage, Pei Yan had been secretly funding her tours and never missed a performance. She cut off contact after she married someone else. He wasn't short of money. He just didn't want to waste it on me. The show received a lot of praise, and even a male student from the neighboring mechanical and electrical engineering college came on stage to present flowers. As I walked off the stage with the flowers, laughing with my roommate, I caught sight of a familiar figure not far away. Pei Yan stood in the shadows, his expression inscrutable. My roommates, sensing the situation, left, and Pei Yan finally spoke up. "Gunanshuang, why did you block me?" "Can't I block you because I find you annoying?" I didn't want to get entangled with him, but he stubbornly blocked my path. "You used to cling to me all the time, and I never complained." He stopped mid-sentence, realizing something, and his tone softened. "Nanshuang, it's my fault, isn't it? Are you punishing me? Don't flatter yourself." He stared intently at the flowers in my hands and said, "The person who just gave you flowers, is he an admirer, or a boyfriend?" "You only ever smiled like that at me." I couldn't help but frown. "Who he is doesn't concern you. I blocked you because I wanted you to stop bothering me. Why are you still coming to my school to find me? Shouldn't he be happily together with his beloved? I finally had a new life. Why did he still have to come and disturb me?" I left angrily, and after that, he somehow found out where my dorm was and waited downstairs for several days. I pretended not to see him when I went out, ignoring him. Avoiding him. After being rebuffed by me, he had no choice but to return to Beijing University, since he still had his studies. It seems grandfather Pei found out, and Pei Yan never bothered me again. Peace lasted until my sophomore year, when I received a call from an unknown number. It was Pei Yan. The first time, I hung up and blocked him as soon as I heard his voice, but he kept calling from different numbers, and I couldn't take it anymore. I answered and yelled at him. After a while, I heard him say, "Nanshuang, how did we end up like this?" The sound of a glass breaking came through the phone. "Nanshuang, I don't know if you remember the girl who came to see me before. She's going abroad." My heart sank. In the past life, He Chushiwe also went abroad around this time. Back then, I was clueless, only remembering Pei Yan reeking of alcohol when he found me. He hugged me tightly, almost crushing me. That night, under the beautiful moonlight, he carefully lifted my face. It was the first time I was so close to him, close enough to see his eyelashes and the reflection of myself in his eyes. My heart raced as he leaned in closer and finally kissed my lips. My brain stopped working for a moment. All I could feel was the softness of his lips. I didn't know why he suddenly drank, or why he suddenly found me. That night, I was confused and spent the night with him. The next day, he woke up full of remorse, telling me he would take responsibility. Naively, I thought he loved me too. Now, he was still mumbling on the phone. "Nanshuang, why did it turn out like this? Why does everyone have to leave me behind?" I was tired of his nonsense and coldly said, "Because you don't deserve it. You had it coming." After saying that, I hung up the phone and blocked him again. Throughout the 4 years of university, I hadn't returned to the Pei family home for a long time. Grandfather Pei knew I was deliberately avoiding Pei Yan and didn't say much about it. After graduating, I pursued a master's degree and settled in the southern province, sending money to grandfather Pei every month. Even though the Pei family was not short of money, I wanted to show my filial piety. After all, the Pei family had raised me for so many years. It was only when grandfather Pei became seriously ill that I hurried back to the Pei household. Seeing Pei Yan again after so many years, I felt no turmoil in my heart. Grandfather Pei left the two of us alone in the hospital room. Seeing his aged and sickly face, I couldn't help but cry. No matter when, Grandfather Pei was always the one who truly cared for me. He never accepted the money I sent over the years, only telling me, "Grandpa just needs you to come and see me, Xiaoshuan." That's enough. I felt deeply ashamed. In my efforts to avoid Pei Yan, I had also avoided seeing Grandfather Pei. He held my hand tightly, his eyes clouded with reluctance to let go. "Xiaoshuan, my biggest regret," he said, "is not fulfilling my old comrade's wish to see you and Ian together, but I also regret forcing you both together. I can see that you are doing better now, so, Grandpa hopes you will follow your heart and walk your own path." To Pei Yan, however, he said, "It's your fault that I lost such a wonderful granddaughter-in-law." After visiting Grandfather Pei, Pei Yan and I left together, and outside awaited He Chuxue, who had been waiting for him for a long time. He specifically explained to me, "Chuxue and I are together now." I smiled and replied, "Yeah, you two are a good match." It seems that in this new life, he finally got his wish to be with his true love, his moonlight, and to be with her. He even had a big fight with Grandfather Pei. So many people say that it was Pei Yan who aggravated his illness. Some relatives joked, "If only you two were together, the old man would surely live to 100. They were wrong. In a previous life, Pei Yan and I were married with children, and Grandfather Pei did not live much longer. Instead, he was always worried about our marriage, which took a toll on his health. Pei Yan is getting married now and sent me an invitation. I casually threw it in the trash, just like the diamond necklace from back then. Because of Grandfather's death, Pei Yan came back early to take over the company, abandoning his PhD studies. In this life, I chose to pursue a PhD and become a professor. At first, I was scared. I feared that my children would despise me as a useless homemaker. But then I thought, why should I prove my worth to others? So I quit my professor job and started trying new things, looking towards a broader world. I saw Pei Yan again when He Chuxue was causing a fuss about their divorce. My friend was handling their divorce case and shared a few complaints with me. I heard their married life wasn't going well. He Chuxue craved freedom, never took care of their child for even a day, and was always out having fun. Pei Yan, busy with work and caring for their child, was stretched thin and began to complain. Afterward, they argued nearly every day, with no peace at all. So it turned out just as the saying goes, the moonlight of youth turns to the mundane rice of daily life. The special mark becomes just another stain. I met a friend for dinner, and when I picked her up from work, I happened to run into the Pei couple. He looked terribly haggard, a shadow of his former spirited self. He Chuxue was still stunningly beautiful, truly his pampered red rose. Pei Yan was holding their son's hand. She walked away without looking back. When Pei Yan saw me, his face was full of embarrassment. "You caught us at a bad time." I ignored it and went to have dinner with a friend. On the way, my friend mentioned that the woman was adamant about getting a divorce, but the man refused to agree. Is this the magic of an unattainable love? Even when life had deteriorated to this point, he still held on. I treated it like a story and soon forgot about it. My lawyer friend told me that Pei Yan had asked for my contact information, wondering if I would be willing to give it to him. I naturally refused. Only then did she tell me that Pei Yan was in the late stages of stomach cancer and didn't have much longer to live. He just wanted to see me one last time. I felt so nauseated I wanted to vomit. I insisted that she not give him my contact information and that she need not mention anything about him to me again. "Can I say one last thing? I heard that you were Pei's cherished unrequited love. The reason they were discussing divorce was because he found your photo in his bookcase. Now that he mentioned wanting to see you, she lost it completely, disregarding his illness and slapped him furiously. I suddenly regretted why I hadn't done the same, but this no longer had anything to do with me. Who his cherished love was, didn't matter anymore. Pei Yan was just a passerby in my life. Extra. Pei Yan, upon learning of his advanced stomach cancer, Pei Yan felt it was a release. The company was unstable, and He Chuxue demanded a high standard of living. He had ruined his stomach from all the entertaining he had to do for business cooperations. He Chuxue stood in front of his hospital bed, indifferently handing him a divorce agreement. "You're dying anyway, just sign this quickly. I don't even want your assets. Just don't let my household registration book read widowed. It's bad luck." Pei Yan wasn't surprised. He had long realized they were from different worlds and not suited for each other. He took the agreement and before signing, he had one request. "Can you help me find Gunan Chuang's contact information?" At this, He Chuxue erupted in rage, grabbing his collar hysterically. "Pei Yan, Are you still obsessed with your childhood sweetheart? If you liked her so much, why didn't you pursue her back then? Instead of deceiving me into marrying you, I gave up my dance career for you, bore you a son, and now have to look after you. How have I wronged you? Have you ever loved me? Pei Yan, facing her accusations and slaps, simply repeated one sentence, promise me, and I'll sign. He Chushue slammed the door and left. Pei Yan lay in his hospital bed, staring at the pure white ceiling, recalling the first time he met Gunanshuang. He was 12 years old when his grandfather brought a timid girl before him. He told him that she would be part of the Pei family from then on. In the future, she would be his wife. As a young man full of pride, he couldn't accept this sudden fiancé. So whenever Gunanshuang came looking for him, he showed him patience and kept her at a distance, but that didn't dampen her enthusiasm. She followed him around like a little tail, calling after him Brother Yen. On one hand, he disliked her, while on the other, he somewhat hoped she would get into Beijing University, but for some reason, he suddenly noticed that the clingy girl had become sensitive and distant. He felt as if he had lost something. He Chushue, wanting to finalize the divorce smoothly, reluctantly sought out the lawyer who knew Gunanshuang, but the lawyer's final response was a firm no. See, the person you can't stop thinking about is avoiding you like a plague. How disgusting are you, thinking of going back to her even when you're dying. Listening to Chushua's scorn, he finally signed the paper. His ex-wife left satisfied, and his son, who despised his dependency, wouldn't even glance at him. A warm sensation rose in his throat. He slowly closed his eyes and fell into complete darkness. He suddenly saw another world where he and Gunanshuang were married. They were married, but why weren't they happy? That's when he saw the hurt in her eyes every time he neglected her. No wonder Nanshuang had stayed away from him all her life. The image of the first time he saw Nanshuang reappeared before him. She was dressed in a white gown, like a trembling gardenia, captivating his gaze. Amidst the chaos of blossoming flowers that threatens to bewilder the eye, he ultimately lost the very one he initially cherished. Story 2. After 10 years of marriage, Song Xiao achieved fame and success with my support, yet, he harbored a deep-seated hatred for me. After my death, he took over my family's company and married his childhood sweetheart. On their wedding day, Fu Yun, my former betrothed and now sworn enemy, detonated the wedding venue. Before the flames engulfed everything, Fu Yun said with a smile, "She's dead, and you all rise effortlessly. Where in the world does such good fortune come from?" When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to 10 years ago. On the very day I went with Song Xiao to break off my engagement with Fu Yun, he looked at me indifferently and asked, "Have you thought this through? Do you really want to break off our engagement for him, Meng Wei?" "I never go back on my decisions," I replied. "Are you sure you want to break off our engagement over someone like him?" he asked with a familiar chill in his voice. I was still lost in the aftermath of the explosion. The overwhelming blaze seemed almost painful, even to my soul suspended in midair. Fu Yun, holding a gun amidst the flames, pulled the trigger. Seeing Song Jiao's mixture of shock and anger, he smiled and said, "She's died to clear the path for your rise. Such good fortune doesn't come easily." At that moment, the invisible shackles on me suddenly dissipated. Suddenly, my mind was flooded with new insights. It turned out that in my past life, I was the evil supporting character in a twisted redemption story. I had preyed on Song Xiao, who was then impoverished, using his mother's medical expenses to coerce him into accepting my financial help and dating me. Song Xiao believed I had humiliated him with money and harbored resentment towards me for many years. After our marriage, he conspired with others to take over my family's company and carried on an affair with his childhood sweetheart. Eventually, he drove me mad, had me committed to a psychiatric hospital, and watched me die from a fall. Then he transformed himself into a newly wealthy man and married his childhood love. Finally, I understood. Fu Yun and I were childhood friends, inseparable from a young age. Yet, in my past life, once Song Xiao appeared, I felt for him as if I had lost my senses. Regaining my composure, I looked around. I saw the varied expressions of the parents on both sides and Fu Yun sitting on the sofa, his expression cold, looking up slightly at me. Suddenly, I remembered, in my past life, today was the day I had irreparably broken with Fu Yun. The Meng and Fu families were old friends, and today was supposed to be a routine family gathering. Yet, I arrived late and brought Song Xiao with me. I immediately demanded to break the engagement with Fu Yun. "I've never liked you, and now I have a boyfriend, so, you've come to break off our engagement over him." Fu Yun adjusted his glasses. His gaze fell on Song Xiao beside me, filled with undisguised contempt. Song Xiao straightened his back, retorting, "What's there to be proud of? You're just a bit better born than me, a bit better." Fu Yun curled his lip, a mocking smile appearing. You better understand, if Meng Wei hadn't brought you here, you wouldn't even have the standing to speak in front of me. This statement deeply wounded Song Zhao's fragile pride. In my past life, I saw his eyes redden with humiliation, and it pained me deeply. I immediately stood in front of him and lashed out at Fu Yun, calling him delusional, pestering endlessly. Don't think I don't know. That high school boy who wrote me love letters mysteriously got hit by a car and broke his leg. You did that, didn't you, Fu Yun? People like you disgust me even with an extra glance. Apart from being born into a good family, what else do you have that compares to Song Xiao? I hurled many harsh words, but Fu Yun didn't retort a single one. He sat there silently, as if he had turned into a frozen statue. After a long time, he adjusted his glasses and calmly said, Fine, I agree to call off the engagement. Song Xiao turned around coldly. Miss Meng. Did you bring me here just to have me humiliated? I clenched my hands tightly, pulling my thoughts from the chaos of having just been reborn. Hearing his words, I suddenly laughed. Humiliation? Fu Yun was merely stating the facts. You're someone to be trifled with at best. Do you really think you're worth his effort? You're overestimating yourself, Song Xiao. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire living room fell into sudden silence. Everyone stared at me in astonishment. From a couch 2 steps away, Fu Yun suddenly looked up. Behind his glasses were eyes fragile and clear like glass, showing a hint of unmasked surprise. What did you say? Song Zhao's expression became extremely awkward. I said, you don't think you compare to my fiancé, do you? He always neglects me when doing business. I was merely using you to provoke him. I let go of his hand and stepped aside, as if avoiding something dirty. I issued an eviction order. Now, you can leave. Song Xiao looked at me incredulously, but the butler, having recovered, escorted him out. Before leaving, he threw down harsh words. Meng Wei, I'm not someone you can summon or dismiss at will. Next time, even if you kneel and beg me, I won't reconcile with you. He's so confident, it makes me want to cry, but right now, I'm too preoccupied to think about Song Xiao. I quickly ran to Fu Yun's side and crouched down. In my previous life, I only found out long after calling off the engagement that Fu Yun had been hospitalized that very night. He had been sitting on the couch all evening because his stomach ailment flared up while he was on a business trip abroad. Despite desperately wanting to see me, he had endured the pain and rushed back. Yet, the first thing I did upon seeing him was to demand a breakup. I truly deserved to die. Our eyes met, and a flicker of realization crossed Fu Yun's eyes. He mocked with a laugh. Using me to anger your boyfriend again? I couldn't blame Fu Yun for overthinking. In my past life, I indeed used him to provoke Song Xiao, trying to prove that he cared about me. Now, all I could do was soften my voice and feign ignorance. What boyfriend? Yun, you're my only fiancé. He looked down at me. I'm not feeling well. Can you accompany me to the hospital first? Fu Yun suddenly frowned. Where does it hurt? Period pain again. Without thinking, I replied, yes, period pain. He glanced at me. Today isn't supposed to be your menstrual cycle. Due to Song Xiao, we had actually been in a cold war for a long time. I didn't expect him to still remember my menstrual cycle. My heart filled with a sudden surge of bitter emotion. It just came early. I gingerly grabbed his sleeve and gave it a shake. I need to go get a painkiller shot. Will you come with me, please? Fu Yun seemed lost in thought and remained silent for a moment before calmly replying, okay. As we got into the car, I instructed the driver to come over, insisting that Fu Yun should not drive. He didn't object and just sat next to me in the back seat, albeit with a noticeable distance between us. I asked in a low voice, Yun, are you mad at me? He slightly curved his lips in a self-mocking smile and said, how dare I? Those 4 words overwhelmed me with a flood of guilt. In my past life, controlled by the plot, my parents couldn't persuade me, and I ended up marrying Song Xiao, using my family's assets to tirelessly support his company. Since Fu Yun was always competing with Song Xiao and taking his projects, I saw him as my sworn enemy. During those 10 years, the few times I met him were always filled with cold words. I never showed him any kindness. Yun, sniffling, I suddenly broke the silence. It's been 2 months. Did you miss me? Fu Yun glanced at me but said nothing. Feeling a bit awkward, I tried to make conversation. You didn't bring me any gifts this time. Last time I did, you said my stuff was dirty and threw it away. He spoke coldly and then turned his head away, closing his eyes as if he was done talking to me. The last time Fu Yun returned from abroad, he brought me a whole box of rubies. When he handed it to me, he casually remarked, take these to make something small. Stop hanging around with low-class stuff. Both the rubies and Fu Yun's words had hurt Song Zhao's pride, so, to appease Song Zhao, I had immediately thrown the box of rubies back at him. I don't care for your dirty stuff. Thinking about it, I closed my eyes in despair, cursing the ridiculousness of the original plot in my mind, which seemed like it could only have been written by someone with a decade-long brain clot. In reality, I could only slowly try to close the distance between us. Moving closer to Fu Yun, I turned towards him, pressed close, my chin resting on his shoulder, and whispered, "Actually, Fu Yun, there's something I need to tell you." My warm breath brushed against the small hairs at his ear. Suddenly, Fu Yun opened his eyes, grabbed me by the back of my neck, and moved me aside. "Whatever act you're putting on with that Song Zhao today, I'm not going to listen, so save your energy." He frowned slightly, paused, and then added, "Also, if you're not feeling well, don't move around too much." Even as Fu Yun scolded me with a stern face, I noticed his ears and neck had flushed red, and he adjusted his sitting position awkwardly. "Fu Yun," I tentatively called out to him, "you wouldn't just sit properly." He lowered his eyelashes, concealing the turbulent desires in his eyes, his voice slightly hoarse. "You don't need to worry about me." The car stopped in front of the hospital. The icy intense atmosphere between Fu Yun and me has significantly relaxed. I thought about how he was suffering from severe stomach pain, and I used the excuse to ask him to support me, taking his arm in the process. Suddenly, an angry yet sweet female voice interrupted, "Meng Wei." I turned around to see Su Wan, Song Zhao's childhood friend, rushing up to me, glaring furiously. "You did it on purpose, didn't you? Intentionally causing someone to cut off Aunt Song's medicine, just to force Song Zhao to bow to you." Her gaze shifted past me, and suddenly her eyes reddened. "You once said that if I disappeared, you would convince that senior oncologist to come out of retirement to treat Aunt Song. Are you going back on your word now?" Wan. Song Zhao quickly stepped forward from behind me, pulling Su Wan to his side to protect her. Then, with furrowed brows and a lowered voice, he said, "Meng Wei, it's all my fault. I won't be angry about what you did to me today. Please don't make it difficult for Wan and my mom. From now on, I will obediently listen to you." I suddenly realized something. In my previous life, the specialist who treated Song Zhao's mother was someone I was able to contact through the Fu family. It's not. Before I could speak further, suddenly, there was a gap in my arm. Fu Yun withdrew his arm from mine, lowered his eyes, and let out a mocking laugh. His eyes carried a clear understanding and a bone-chilling coldness. "So that's why you suddenly asked me to bring you to the hospital, Meng Wei. Is this what you wanted to tell me?" Fu Yun's expression, which seemed cold and sharp yet as fragile as shattered glass, was all too familiar to me. In my past life, every time I confronted him for the sake of Song Zhao, he would look at me like this. Back then, bound by the original plot, I was wholeheartedly devoted to Song Zhao. I just found Fu Yun's pretentious attitude annoying. Now, however, it pained me. And I instinctively retorted, "No," but he no longer looked at me. His gaze coldly turned to Song Zhao. "Since you look down on me, show some real skill, even to treat your own mother. You still involve my fiancé in this act. Aren't you ashamed?" Song Zhao clenched his teeth, a hint of humiliation flashing in his eyes. "Fu, don't think too highly of yourself." He clenched his fists and said coldly, "Someday, you will pay for what you said today." Fu Yun ignored him and walked away without looking back. I was about to follow him but was grabbed by Song Zhao. "Meng Wei." His eyes were downcast as he looked at me, his voice hoarse. "Meng Wei, it's all my fault, don't be angry." As his chilling fingers grasped my wrist, memories of my past life flooded back, and I felt as if a cold, venomous snake was coiling around me. "Don't touch me, it's disgusting." Caught off guard, I shook him off, leaving Song Zhao somewhat stunned, clearly in disbelief. After all, in the past, no matter how angry I was, as long as he showed a slight concession, I would relent without limits. "Meng Wei," he tried to say something else, but I forcefully interrupted him. "Since you always feel that me spending money is an insult to you, transfer the 600,000 yuan for your mother's treatment to my card within 3 days. Let's see just how principled you really are." Wearing high heels, I ran all the way and finally caught up with Fu Yun at the hospital entrance. "Fu Yun," I was panting as I grabbed his sleeve, but before I could speak, he turned his head. "Meng Wei, there is indeed some old affection between you and me," he said coldly, "but that doesn't mean you can take advantage of that, expecting me to endlessly yield for your boyfriend." After speaking, he tried to pull his sleeve away, but I grabbed it tightly. "It has nothing to do with him." "Alright, I admit it. I didn't come to the hospital because of menstrual pain. I came because I wanted to bring you here. Your stomach problem flared up again, didn't it?" "Fu Yun, don't think I don't know. You don't eat properly when you're out dealing with business." He looked at me somewhat astonished, his gaze slowly sweeping across my face, as if trying to discern the truth in my words. Seeing his expression soften slightly, I quickly pressed on, dragging him into the examination room. The doctor, holding his medical report with furrowed brows, said, "You need to pay special attention to your diet with chronic gastritis, especially when you're feeling unwell. Don't force yourself and make sure to come to the hospital promptly. Let's start within 4 for a couple of days." The sunlight streamed through the window, filling the room completely. When only Fu Yun and I were left in the ward, the air suddenly grew quiet. I ordered some porridge via delivery, and after it arrived, I cooled it with a spoon and fed him. Fu Yun, with his eyelashes lowered, seemed lost in thought. "The doctor said you should eat something, otherwise, it will be uncomfortable during the 4. At my reminder, he finally looked up at me, his eyes, touched by the sunlight, reflected shimmering waves of light. "Okay," he responded softly, finally willing to open his mouth. After he had half a bowl of porridge, Fu Yun gestured for me to put the bowl down. "Phone." I handed over my phone, puzzled, and watched as he entered a series of numbers. "What's this?" "Director Fong's number, the tumor specialist you've been eager to consult." Suddenly, I lifted my head, noting Fu Yun's pale face and the faint bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. Then it hit me, even now, he thought I had an ulterior motive by bringing you to the hospital. "I'm giving you what you wanted, so I don't owe you anything. I don't want you to bring up today's incident next time you come asking for a favor on his behalf, saying that just watching me eat porridge made you sick." "Meng Wei, I'm human too." The sunlight slanted across his face, spreading a rare fragility across his stern features. A sudden tightness gripped my chest, leaving me at a loss for words. I remembered the incident Fu Yun mentioned 3 months ago, when Song Zhao's studio was trying to secure a project. Fu Yun was the decision-maker on the client's side, so I went to him, cooked him dinner, and even brought gifts. While Fu Yun was in a good mood, I asked him, "Could you loosen up a bit, and let Song Zhao's team handle the project?" The smile on Fu Yun's face faded almost instantly. He put down his chopsticks and looked at me. "So, you came to see me today just for your boyfriend? Song Zhao really is capable." I tried to argue, but he interrupted me with his stern voice. "A capable person wouldn't need to rely on you to secure a project through back doors. You can go now. I've already reviewed the proposal and made my decision. He won't be chosen." Fu Yun stood up, pulled back his chair, and dismissed me. I was so angry that I lost my reason, pointing at his nose and yelling, "If it weren't for Song Zhao, I wouldn't even want to see you. Just seeing you eat the food I made makes me sick." In my blurred vision, suddenly a hand reached out, wiping the moisture from the corner of my eye. It was only then that I realized I had been crying. Fu Yun withdrew his hand and said indifferently, "Don't feel wronged. After today, I won't bother you anymore. We're even now." Meng Wei. It was normal for him not to trust me since I had a history. While convincing myself in my heart, I fought back the tears and looked at Fu Yun seriously. "I'm sorry." He paused, slightly taken aback. "Love can't be forced. No need to apologize. Once we leave the hospital today, I will explain everything to your uncle and aunt, and we'll call off." Before he could finish, my sudden kiss interrupted him. Fu Yun's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at me. I awkwardly rubbed my lips against his for a moment before pulling back slightly, gasping lightly as I clutched his collar. "No, don't talk about calling off the engagement." I steadied myself and continued, "Fu Yun, whether you believe me or not, the things that happened with Song Zhao before weren't my intention. I brought you to the hospital only because I saw you looked unwell and I was worried about your health." He looked down at me, his emotions swirling behind his long lashes, making them indecipherable. "Is this another one of your new lines?" I suppressed the bitterness in my heart. "We've known each other as long as I've been alive, so you can't just not believe in me. If you don't believe me, I'll kiss you again." As I said this, I moved closer again, but Fu Yun stopped me by pressing his forehead against mine, halting me just in time. His breath was close, his voice husky. "Meng Wei, do you realize what you're doing?" I responded, "I know. I'm doing what we did when we were 18. That statement was like a fuse, igniting all our senses in an instant. On the night of the college entrance exam completion, my family held a celebration dinner for me. I drank a few glasses of champagne and, feeling tipsy, pulled Fu Yun into my room. I asked him, "What does kissing feel like?" He quietly looked at me. "Meng Wei, you're drunk." I was slightly upset. "Don't change the subject. If you don't tell me, I'll go find someone else." Before I could finish, Fu Yun suddenly grasped my chin and pressed his lips against mine. A faint scent of lemongrass emanated from him, a gift I had given him for his birthday this year. Both his lips and the fingertips against my neck were scorching, my head was spinning. And soon all I could manage was to clutch at his shirt, overwhelmed by the intense heat that followed. Fu Yun's voice carried a deep, surging desire. This is what kissing feels like. Do you want to go deeper, Meng Wei? Back then, we were so close, so intimate. I always thought that after graduating from college, I would marry Fu Yun, but upon entering school, from the moment I saw Song Xiao, I was inexplicably drawn into the whirlpool of the original plot. The needle for the forehead shifted. Soaking a large patch of tape with blood, he glanced at me. No need to apologize. Then, do you believe me now? It depends on your actions. Although he said that, his tone had already softened somewhat. As the month was drawing to a close, Fu Yun went to a neighboring city for business. I returned to school for classes, but didn't forget to send him messages whenever I found a moment. I was determined to prove to him that he was the only one in my heart. Fu Yun's birthday was approaching. And that afternoon, I planned to go to the mall to pick out a gift for him. Suddenly, I spotted a familiar figure from afar. It was Song Xiao. He hadn't contacted me since our last heavy conversation at the hospital. I was quite relieved at first, but now, when he should have been busy at the studio, he was entering a garden restaurant with a young man. My heart tightened instantly, and I hurried forward a few steps. As I entered, the man just happened to look up. It was like a bolt of lightning struck me, and I froze on the spot. Wasn't this person Shui Kai, who in my past life had collaborated with Song Xiao to bring Fu Yun and the Meng family to ruin? I stealthily followed them and hid behind some greenery. Just in time to overhear their conversation. Fu Yun has already gone to Haicheng. It seems he hasn't noticed anything wrong with that project. Song Xiao sneered coldly, his voice chilling. I want more than just his company. I want his life. In my past life, I often found it odd. Fu Yun, born into the Fu family, was the most outstanding child of his generation. He earned an MBA from the most prestigious business school at the age of 20 and then returned home to take over the family business. Such a Fu Yun, why did he repeatedly lose to Song Xiao, eventually even losing most of his family's company to him? Was it just because he was the male lead, or did he possess some special information? What was this Haicheng project they mentioned? Countless questions circled in my mind. I really wanted to ask Fu Yun, but I feared that confronting Song Xiao prematurely might accelerate the development of the original plot and push Fu Yun towards a predetermined fate. After much thought, I decided to start with Song Xiao and gather some intelligence, to prevent Fu Yun from falling into danger under the influence of the original storyline. After returning home, I asked the housekeeper to stew some soup, then took it to the hospital. Sure enough, I ran into Song Xiao in the hospital room. He glanced at me coldly and remained silent. I approached him with a resigned air, tugging at his sleeve. I tried to recall the tone of arrogance and weakness I used before. You're not still mad at me, are you? I'm really upset too. You promised me you wouldn't have any more contact with Su Wan, yet the moment I arrived at the hospital, there she was, yelling at me. What does she think she is? A flash of disgust crossed Song Jiao's eyes, but he concealed it well. I've already asked her to leave, he said indifferently. She came that day because she was worried about my mother's health. It won't happen again. That's for the best. Don't forget I'm your girlfriend, I said. I've asked Fu Yun these past few days, and he said he would help get that expert to come out of retirement to perform the surgery on Auntie, but it will take some time. He's recently been thinking about investing in a project, but there's been a problem. Song Jiao's Adam's apple bobbed, and he suddenly turned to look at me. What problem? I pretended to try hard to remember. It seems like, could it have something to do with the suburbs of Haicheng? The next whole day, Song Jiao's attitude towards me warmed up considerably. He kept indirectly probing, trying to find out if Fu Yun knew anything, pretending that I wanted to reconcile with him. I finally got invited to a dinner with Shui Kai and others. Before leaving, I felt inexplicably guilty. So I called Fu Yun to inform him, but his phone was off. After some thought, I decided I couldn't miss this opportunity. In the private room with excellent confidentiality, Shui Kai raised his glass to me. Miss Meng, I intend to invest in Song Jiao's studio. My name is Shui Kai. Perhaps in the future, we might even collaborate. I remembered that in my previous life, it was he who helped Song Xiao ruin most of the Fu family and annex my family's assets. I could only suppress my disgust and exchange pleasantries with him. After a few rounds of drinks, he seemingly casually asked, I heard that the Meng family and the Fu family are old friends, and Miss Meng was even engaged to the current head of the Fu family. Fu Yun, what engagement? That was just the adults talking nonsense. He always makes things difficult for Xiao. I hate him to death. I looked at Song Xiao. From childhood, There has only been one person I liked, and that's Xiao. If it weren't for Xiao, I wouldn't bear with the disgust to deal with him. While saying these things, my mind was filled with the faces of Song Xiao and Shui Kai. The displayed hatred was too real and deep, making everyone in the private room burst into laughter. Miss Ming truly has a discerning eye, able to see through the true face of a hypocrite like Fu Yun. Shui Kai leaned closer with a smile. Then, could you tell me what he is actually doing in Haicheng? Feeling drunk, I stood up. Excuse me, I feel unwell, I need to go to the restroom. I staggered to the door of the private room in my high heels and pulled it open. A gust of cold air mixed with a faint scent of lemongrass brushed past. The light spread a thin layer over the familiar handsome face in front of me. I shivered, suddenly sobering up. Fu Yun stood at the door with an expressionless face, and upon seeing me, he slightly curled his lips. Wei, so this is the situation. The corridor was bathed in a warm yellow light. It fell on Fu Yun's face, yet it felt chilling to the bone. He heard everything. In the mix of smells, I suddenly pulled out a thread of messy thoughts. The surge of drunkenness instantly dissipated, my fingers trembling on the doorknob. A sense of foreboding overwhelmed me, and I instinctively called out, Yun, better not call me that, lest you disgust yourself again. He swept a disappointed and chilling gaze over me. Then his gaze moved past my shoulder to Song Xiao and Shui Kai behind me. Wanted to know what I was doing in Haicheng. Why not dare to ask me directly? He chuckled lightly, his voice gaining a decisively sharper edge. Think that planting a few spies in the company can affect my judgment? Your methods are as laughable as you are. Standing tall, his gaze toward those people was condescendingly obvious. Clowns. With that, he turned and left. In the private room, Song Jiao's expression darkened. And he suddenly flipped over a plate. What's there to be proud of? You think this is all I'm capable of? One day, I will watch him die right before my eyes. I really felt like slapping him twice, thinking about the original plot, yet I still dared not take it lightly. I could only manage a forced smile. I'll go back with Fu Yun first, and ask him what exactly he has found out. After saying that, I grabbed my bag and left. I chased him all the way downstairs. Just in time to see Fu Yun getting into his car. Fu Yun, I gasped for breath and quickly began, listen to me. I came here today to find out what kind of scheme Song Xiao and his people are plotting against you. Through the half-open car window, meeting Fu Yun's dead calm gaze, my voice suddenly faltered. He raised his hand, leisurely supporting his chin as if listening to some amusing joke. He even curved his lips slightly, chuckling softly. Are you going to say that this is all because you like me and are worried about my safety, afraid that I can't handle them alone? My anxiety and panic surged up like sea foam. I clenched my palm, forcing myself to calm down and explain seriously. Yes, I know you don't believe me, but Song Xiao is not as simple as you think. If his methods were only what he shows, I wouldn't. Mei Wei. Fu Yun suddenly interrupted me, through the gradually closing car window. I saw his eyes, shattered yet still beautiful. You can't keep deceiving me endlessly just because I love you. After this, let's not contact each other anymore. After these words, the car window closed completely, the reflective film isolating everything. The black Rolls-Royce drove away without hesitation. I was left standing there alone. The cool night breeze blew over, suddenly giving me a shiver. In my past life, after I married Song Xiao, Fu Yun warned me more than once, saying he had ulterior motives and that I must be careful. No matter what he said, I didn't believe him. I even scoffed and mocked him. Are you just jealous of Xiao? Jealous that he came from an ordinary background, yet now stands in a higher position than you? A hypocrite full of lies. I won't believe a word you say. At that time, Fu Yun stood in front of me, impeccably dressed in a suit, his eyes full of pain. Coming to my senses, I had already gotten into the car and instructed the driver to head to Fu's house. However, Fu Yun did not return to the old house, nor to his own home. The car circled around most of the city, finally stopping under his company building. Looking up, I saw a light still on in the top floor office. Thinking of his sharp, resistant expression just before the car window closed, I suddenly felt a bit cowardly. So I went to a nearby convenience store, bought a can of beer, and drank it all at once to bolster my courage. Once the drunkenness slowly started to kick in, I entered the elevator and pressed the button. Floor 17. Fu Yun's office was on the 39th floor, highly private, but he never set barriers against me. When I pushed open the door, the large office was empty. From the tightly closed door of the adjoining restroom, the faint sound of water could be heard. Other than that, there was only the faint scent of lemongrass mixed with a slight smell of blood. My heart tightened, and countless scenes from my past life flashed through my mind, and without thinking, I pushed open the door of the restroom. It was just at the moment when I opened the door, in the restroom of the lounge, the sound of running water suddenly stopped. Fu Yun stepped out, drying his damp hair, but he froze when his eyes met mine. Wei, my gaze uncontrollably fell upon him. I've always known that Fu Yun was remarkably handsome, yet, most of the time, his expression was cold, creating a sense of distance, but now, with the air filled with mist, his usual stern facial features seemed slightly softened. Droplets of water trickled from his hair tips, gliding along his smooth muscle contours, disappearing at the edge of the towel wrapped around his waist. His usually concealed pale skin was fully exposed, and a small mole on his waist shone provocatively. Additionally, his left forearm was wrapped in several layers of wet bandages, faintly revealing a hint of blood. He was indeed injured. Get out. Perhaps my intense gaze was too apparent. Fu Yun closed his eyes and coldly rebuked, yet, his tone lacked any real deterrence, whether driven by alcohol or instinct. I blinked. Instead of leaving, I stepped further in and shut the door behind me. You're hurt? I approached him and asked. Fu Yun, what happened? Your wound has started bleeding again. It needs to be rebandaged. It's just a minor injury. Fu Yun responded indifferently. I can handle it myself. It's none of your concern. Pausing, he then added, Miss Meng, you shouldn't be here in my office, especially not when your boyfriend. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my kiss, heavy with the scent of alcohol, sealing his next words. Stop talking. None of what you say is what I want to hear, I murmured, somewhat unclearly, as our lips met. The temperature between us escalated rapidly, in a disarray of steps. We both fell onto the nearby bed, the towel unraveling amidst our entanglement. After a prolonged and deep kiss, I leaned on Fu Yun's shoulders, gasping for breath. His eyes were filled with intense, dark desire, yet, he managed to speak with some difficulty. Is this because of him again? Of course, it's for myself. Alcohol and kissing muddled my thoughts, and without much consideration, the words slipped out. Isn't it normal to have some indescribable thoughts about one's fiancé after seeing him fresh out of the shower? My fingers, wet with droplets, unintentionally played with the mist-covered red points on his stark white skin. Pleased, I watched as Fu Yun's Adam's apple bobbed violently twice before he grasped my hand. Besides, since I was 18, I've been thinking about this. With you, Fu Yun, it can only be you. The air stilled for a moment, then, everything turned upside down. The entire world seemed to spin, leaving only the two of us. The remaining droplets quickly evaporated due to the intense heat. The ceiling lamp, like a small boat violently tossed in a storm, swayed just like I did. Soon, all that was left was the sound of our rapid breathing. Unexpectedly, my thoughts drifted back to when I was 18, to the night after the college entrance exams, when I got drunk and secretly kissed Fu Yun on the balcony. No matter how much I coaxed or teased, he would only agree to kiss me. Wei, you are still young. His voice was close to my ear, his body temperature scorching as he continued to restrain himself. I must give you a chance to change your mind. Now, Fu Yun. I only managed to utter 2 words, startled by the hoarseness of my own voice. Fu Yun paused, his gaze slightly lowered, looking down at me. The dense, fog-like emotions in his eyes surged momentarily, then dissipated. Moments later, he lifted his hand and covered my eyes. There won't be a second chance to change your mind. Wei. Outside the window, a heavy rain had started at some unknown time. Inside the lounge, the moist hot mist rose along the light. Fu Yun pressed on the most sensitive part of my lower back, varying between gentle and firm, his voice husky. Wei, don't hide, feel me properly. Thinking of the wound on his arm, I worriedly tried to prop up my upper body to check, but a sudden increase in force made me swallow all my words. I told you. It's just a minor injury. Fu Yun's slender fingers twirled a strand of my sweat-dampened hair. His eyes, usually cold, seemed to crack open slightly, revealing the intense emotions buried deep within. There's plenty of time. Wei, don't be so nervous. The fresh scent of lemongrass gradually mixed with the scent on my body, along with the smell of alcohol. At some moment, they blended, overflowing. At 4 in the morning, I dragged my weakened body onto the carpet, barely able to stand. Fu Yun, using his uninjured arm, hooked around my waist and pulled me back. You should rest now. Wei. I tried to look back at him, but your wound really needs to be rebandaged. Also, how did you get hurt? Fu Yun suddenly fell silent. In the suffocating quiet, I suddenly realized something. You don't think I'm gathering information about you for Song Xiao, do you? He looked straight at me, obviously acknowledging it. I felt a bit sad and a bit angry. We've already been intimate. I've said it. I was afraid you were in danger, so I went to Song Xiao to find out their plans against you. Why won't you believe me? I have believed you. Fu Yun's voice was soft. Over these 2 years, I believed you many times. Wei Wei. Suddenly, it felt as if my throat was blocked. I blinked back slightly sore eyes, listening as he continued. But whether I believe you or not doesn't matter anymore. From now on, no matter how sweet your words, I won't let you go again. As for that Song Xiao, he's not as simple as you think, I blurted out, seeing Fu Yun's slightly furrowed brow. I took a deep breath. If I said that in a past life, I died at his hand, would you believe me? Outside the window, the heavy rain pelted the glass, the dark night showing no hint of moonlight. In the ambiguous light of the room, the Fu Yun opposite me seemed to freeze entirely. A past life. Fu Yun, have you ever thought that we might actually be characters in a book? Hesitating for a moment, thinking of the terrifying power of the original plot, I decided to tell Fu Yun everything. I don't know if it was a dream, or a real past life. In any case, from the moment Song Xiao appeared in my last life, it seemed like suddenly, I could only see him. By the time I finished recounting those 10 years from my past life, the rain outside the window had already stopped, and a pale golden glow was spreading across the sky. The final project cost my parents their lives and allowed Song Xiao to successfully take over all our family's assets. He said he hated me because he endured unimaginable humiliation by my side over those 10 years. After that, he used the excuse that the shock I suffered was too great and that I had lost my mind, and had me committed to a psychiatric hospital. At this point, my voice began to choke up. Even though so much time had passed and everything had started over, the 6 months I spent in the psychiatric hospital still felt like a nightmare. Every day, I was restrained and forcibly injected with excessive doses of medication. My brain was muddled, barely having any lucid moments. I also had to endure the near-death agony of regular electric shocks. So later, when I finally came to my senses, I escaped from the ward and jumped off the hospital's rooftop. My voice trembled slightly as I was engulfed in Fu Yun's sudden embrace and warmth. His hands moved through my hair, pressing my head against his chest. That was just a dream. I won't let that happen. Yes, you won't. I closed my eyes in his arms. The scene of the wedding day with fireworks seemed to reappear before my eyes. So even if in the dream you couldn't overcome the power of the original plot and save me, you still sent him to hell at the moment of Song Zhao's greatest joy. The familiar scent of Fu Yun and the drowsiness from a sleepless night soon lulled me into a deep sleep. In the dream, it was as if I had returned to my previous life. During those 10 years with Fu Yun, whenever we met in public, I attacked him with the most venomous words, relentlessly trying to bring him down. Yet, he still wore the lemongrass-scented perfume. While I was alive, I despised him intensely and never cared. It wasn't until I watched him being engulfed by the flames that I suddenly understood, because that was Meng Wei at 18. Before she ever met Song Xiao, it was the last gift Meng Wei gave to Fu Yun, 21. The first thing I did after waking up was to take Fu Yun to the hospital to have his wounds treated again. Keep it dry, and don't use this arm strenuously for the next 7 days, the doctor instructed sternly, then said, you can go now. As we got into the car, I turned to Fu Yun and asked, can you finally tell me how you got hurt? Under the dim light inside the car, he looked into my eyes and sighed softly. It was just a minor accident during a site inspection at the project. I suddenly bit my lip. Is it related to Song Xiao? Fu Yun's warm fingertips teased mine apart, soothing my lips gently. Don't worry, the only way he can hurt me is through you. So, you just need to stay away from him, and leave the rest to me. But I don't want it that way. I caught his slightly seductive fingers and said earnestly, Fu Yun, I've died once. In a sense, I'm even older than you now. Whatever you plan to do or how you plan to deal with Song Xiao, let me know and include me. Okay. He paused for a moment, then quietly agreed. Okay, Meng Wei, I won't interfere with your decisions, but try to stay away from Song Xiao, he advised. I nodded, then couldn't resist teasing him a bit. Are you afraid I'll be bewitched by Song Xiao again? Fu Yun nodded calmly, yet a hint of unmasked vulnerability flashed behind his lowered eyelashes. He was scared. It turned out that Fu Yun, who took over the Fu family at the age of 16 and was known for his decisive actions, could feel fear too. I cupped Fu Yun's face earnestly and said, Fu Yun, we've known each other since the day I was born. When I was a child, I was weak and often in the hospital. You visited me every day with flowers and comic books. When I had my first period at 14, it was you who bought me sanitary pads. After our first kiss at 18, I've been dreaming about you ever since. Without the original plot's brainwashing, I wouldn't spare Song Xiao a second glance. I've always loved you. Only you. Those words were like the key that suddenly unlocked Pandora's box. In the soundproofed, enclosed space, Fu Yun abruptly pulled me closer by the back of my head and kissed me forcefully. The kiss was intense, causing a tingling pain on my lips, even numbing my tongue. My body went limp, overheated, as I sat on his lap, continuously slipping downwards, until I crumpled his neatly pressed suit shirt into a ball. I suddenly remembered the doctor's advice. Wait, your wound, you shouldn't strain it. Fu Yun, using his uninjured hand, scooped me back up and firmly seated me on his lap. Because of the slight exertion, the muscles in his thigh, encased in his tailored trousers, tensed up. Feeling scorching to the touch, I wavered, instinctively bracing myself against his leg. Fu Yun let out a low groan, his voice raspy. It felt as if there was a fire burning hotter and hotter in front of my fingertips. My reason was instantly incinerated. My hands moved forward inch by inch, reaching for that blazing fire. At the same moment, Fu Yun's husky voice, filled with restrained desire, echoed in my ears. Then I'll leave it to you, Wei Wei, show me the dreams you've had about me. After that day, Song Xiao didn't contact me for a long time. I went around the hospital only to find out that he had managed to get another oncologist out of retirement through someone else's help to perform surgery on his mother. That was probably his hero's halo. As graduation approached, I simply started an internship at our family's company ahead of schedule. Since the Meng family had long maintained cooperation with the Fu family, I naturally had more contact with Fu Yun. I planned to visit Song Zhao's studio later. Sitting across from Fu Yun, I bit into my bagel and began, according to what happened in the previous timeline. By this time, you and I would have fallen out, and I would start using my family's resources to help Song Xiao build connections and snatch an important project from you. Fu Yun suddenly looked up at me. His emotions were clearly visible under his long eyelashes. I quickly added, I'm just going to probe and see what his current plans are. Wait for me to come home for dinner tonight. Song Zhao's studio wasn't far from the city center. Without my relentless support, he wouldn't have been able to afford this place initially. As I entered, I saw Su Wan sitting at his desk. Song Xiao stood behind her, bending over in an extremely intimate posture, almost enveloping her completely. It was just like in my previous life. I had already noticed countless times the inappropriate closeness between him and Su Wan, which Song Xiao always denied. We had argued about it many times, each more explosive than the last. When I became nearly hysterical, Song Xiao would just stand by, watching me with tired eyes. Later on, all of this became evidence of how I oppressed and humiliated him. Coming back to my senses from my memories, I spoke coldly. What are you doing? The two people in front of me seemed to suddenly freeze. A moment later, Song Xiao straightened up and smoothed out his slightly wrinkled clothes. He looked at me, but his words were directed at Su Wan. You go out first. Su Wan glared at me unhappily and then got up and left. Now alone in the room, Song Xiao resumed his cold demeanor. Weren't you following Fu Yun? What are you doing back here looking for me? He still tried to manipulate me with his old tricks. Indeed, if it were Meng Wei controlled by the original plot, she would now lower her dignity to apologize. Professing her love only for him, she would then do everything possible to help his studio, proving that she was the only one who could offer him certain things. I slightly lifted my chin. Recently, there's a project at the family company that was supposed to collaborate with the Fu Corporation, but I thought of choosing you. Song Xiao suddenly looked up at me, his Adam's apple moving slightly. I curled the corner of my lips. However, the project has a long duration and involves a huge amount of funds. I need to first make sure how much you can handle. That night, I combined the information from my past life with what I had learned and told Fu Yun. I suspect that, because of my rebirth, the plot has progressed faster, and Song Xiao has already hooked up with Zhao Run, the newly appointed gang leader in Nanjing. In my past life, he only met that person several years later, and with his current power, collaborating with such a person is akin to consorting with a tiger. Thinking this, I frowned slightly. Fu Yun, who had been looking over a contract, paused and looked up at me. That's because Shui Kai can no longer provide him with help. I was startled. In the Haicheng project, they planted a mole in a subsidiary to steal accounts and create false impressions. Now Shui Kai and his men are already in prison. He flipped to the next page of the documents in his hand, his tone as calm as usual. Song Zhao's company is just starting up. He's too weak and can only depend on others. I suddenly realized, you orchestrated this. Fu Yun did not argue, evidently accepting my statement. I blinked and threw myself into his arms. Yun, you're incredible. He caught my wandering hand, suddenly adopting a serious expression. Wei Wei, don't get involved in what comes next. Why? Because it's dangerous, he said, slightly furrowing his brow. Song Zhao's identity is not as simple as you think. Otherwise, Zhao Run wouldn't have agreed so readily to collaborate with him. I was suddenly stunned. You said that in my past life, I chose the most tragic way to perish together with them. Fu Yun's tone remained steady. Yet it inexplicably carried a chilling undertone. That must have been because I had no other choice left. That night, I dreamt again. I dreamt of my previous life. In the 6th year of my marriage to Song Xiao, at a certain evening banquet, I saw him standing closely with Zhao Run's daughter, Zhao Yi, in an intimate posture, and then, inexplicably, I went mad with jealousy, losing all reason. I sent people to kidnap Zhao Yi, but ended up being taken away by Zhao Run's men instead. A cold dagger pressed against my neck, slowly tracing down along the contours of my body. I thought I would die there. In the end, Song Xiao, with an indifferent face, walked through the door and took me away from the gang, opened the door for another woman who was elegantly dressed. As they both entered the building, I felt a pang of unease. The scene from my dream flashed before my eyes, intertwining with the reality in front of me, and a chill ran down my spine. Because of this, in my past life, I always believed that he was only superficially indifferent, but deep down, he still had feelings for me. But, in this dream, it was like a sudden change of scenes in a movie. I saw another room where Zhao Run, with his scarred face, was sitting, along with the expressionless Fu Yun by his side. In front of them was a large screen, frozen on the image of a dagger pressed against my neck. Zhao Run chuckled lightly. So, Mr. Fu, have you considered my proposal for collaboration? Fu Yun, with his beautiful eyes, looked at my tear-streaked face without any change in expression. A few seconds later, he shifted his gaze. I agree, let Meng Wei leave safely. Zhao Run smiled satisfiedly. Mr. Fu is a smart man. It's a pity, though, if you had agreed to become my son-in-law, we could have been family in the future. Fu Yun responded distantly. I am not so fortunate. After he stood up and left, Song Xiao and Zhao Yi pushed the door and entered. Zhao Yi sighed with a bit of regret. Dad, has Fu Yun agreed to cooperate with us? Zhao Run nodded. Such poor taste, preferring that foolish Meng Wei over marrying me. She laughed and turned her head to look at Song Xiao. Brother, when will you divorce this fool and marry Sister Su Wan? I abruptly opened my eyes. It was dark around me, with only a sliver of moonlight seeping in through the window. The scenes from the dream still lingered in my mind, quickly connecting with other information I knew, revealing the hidden truths of my past life. Wei. I barely moved when Fu Yun next to me pulled me into his embrace, holding me. He stayed quiet for a few seconds, then spoke with concern. You're trembling. I know now. I closed my eyes, inhaling his familiar, crisp scent. I know now. Yun. That Song Xiao is Zhao Run's illegitimate son. Zhao Run agreed to cooperate with him now because they have recognized each other as father and son. Fu Yun was completely indifferent to Song Zhao's real identity. He just held me tighter. What did you dream about? I wrapped my arms around his slim waist, my voice choked. I'm sorry, Fu Yun. I finally understood that in my past life, under the schemes of Song Xiao and the Zhao family, I became a hostage threatening Fu Yun. The Fu family's business was forced into disreputable dealings, so, in the end, Fu Yun chose to perish with everyone at that grand wedding. Thankfully, in this life, I've awakened from the original plot's constraints. There's still time. Once I calmed down, I recounted the scenes from the dream. Fu Yun's hands behind my back suddenly tightened slightly, his voice cold as ice. Zhao Yi, I understand. He opened the car door. Next, Fu Yun, dressed in a suit, stepped out with a faint smile on his lips. I don't know what he said, but Zhao Yi covered her mouth, laughing as she pulled something resembling a letter from her small bag and handed it to him. Then she got into the car and left. Fu Yun stood still, surveying his surroundings. When he passed by my car, he paused. I was certain he recognized me, yet, he acted as if he saw nothing, calmly shifting his gaze and went upstairs. A profound sense of sorrow suddenly spread through my heart. So, was this how Fu Yun felt all those countless times he saw me with Song Xiao? I pushed open the car door, went upstairs, and found Fu Yun in his office. He looked up from behind his desk. Why didn't you knock? I replied sourly. Does Zhao Yi need to knock when she comes to see you? Fu Yun fell silent for a moment, then suddenly stood up and walked towards the lounge area. As he walked, he loosened his tie and unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his shirt. Standing inside the lounge with his collar partly open, he looked at me and said, "Come here." I deliberately dragged my feet, slowly making my way over. Just as I entered the lounge, the door suddenly closed behind me. My back pressed against the cold, hard door panel, but what pressed against my chest was the burning warmth of Fu Yun's body. He gripped my shoulders, his moist kisses trailing from my lips to my ears. then following the lines of my body, inch by inch downwards. Fu Yun knew me too well, including my reactions, the limits I could endure, what every tremble of my body meant. I felt like I was thrown high into the clouds, then suddenly dropped into an endless ocean. Fu Yun, I barely managed to call out his name, trembling, before being plunged back into the boundless ocean of bliss. In the end, before being completely engulfed by the waves, I heard his hoarse voice, heated with breath, close to my ear. Are you done checking? I still belong only to you. I turned Zhao Yi's letter to Fu Yun over several times. It turned out to be an invitation to her birthday party. As the main person in charge of the Meng's project in collaboration with the Zhao family, I also received one. That day will be dangerous. I'd prefer you didn't go. Fu Yun's clear, glass-like eyes looked into mine. But will you listen to me, Wei Wei? I shook my head honestly, no, then quickly added, because, under normal circumstances, we are currently cooperating smoothly. If I inexplicably don't attend the party, it might arouse their suspicions. This reason was sufficient. Even Fu Yun couldn't refute it. He stared at me for a while, then leaned in to kiss me again. Whatever happens, Wei Wei, remember, your own safety is most important. Soon, it was the day of Zhao Yi's birthday party. The Meng's project was actually a collaboration with the government. So many influential people attended, and as one of the 3 cooperating parties, Song Xiao thus successfully made many connections. I watched with a cold eye as Suwan followed behind him. Sensing my gaze, she suddenly turned around and looked at me with a mix of triumph and provocation. Then, as if to show off, she hooked her arm into Song Zhao's. Such trash, better keep it to yourself. Looking around the venue, among the guests who came here, I recognized quite a few familiar faces. These were the business partners that Song Xiao was supposed to meet several years later in his previous life. Was everything accelerated because Fu Yun took the initiative? Just as I was beginning to understand, today's party's protagonist, Zhao Yi, made her appearance. She was holding Zhao Run's arm with one hand, and on her other side stood Fu Yun, wearing a faint smile. Welcome everyone to my birthday party, she said with a beaming smile. Her eyes briefly passing over mine with a touch of smugness, a waiter rolled out a massive 3-tiered cake. After cutting the cake, she and Fu Yun came down to mingle with the guests and quickly approached me. Miss Meng, I hope we will enjoy a pleasant collaboration on the upcoming projects. Zhao Yi smiled at me then suddenly turned to ask Fu Yun, I heard you and Miss Meng were close before, even betrothed as children. That was just a family joke. Not to be taken seriously, Fu Yun said, his gaze sweeping over me coolly before indifferently shifting away. Besides, Miss Meng already has someone in her heart. We have no relation now. Even though I knew he was acting, I still clenched my teeth in frustration. It took me a moment to scoff disdainfully. I should thank President Fu for finally letting me go. He left with Zhao Yi at his side, holding a glass of wine. I soon found Song Xiao near the garden-facing French windows. He was on the phone, and Su Wan, who had been with him, was nowhere in sight. I couldn't tell what the person on the other end was saying, but his expression gradually turned solemn. Outside the window, the first firework of the night burst into the dark sky, followed by countless more. These fireworks, meant to celebrate Zhao Yi's birthday, perfectly masked the sound of gunfire from a fierce battle at a gang's secret arms depot not far away. Recalling Fu Yun's earlier instructions, I discreetly moved back to a corner. Getting ready to leave through the garden path, suddenly, a bloodied figure burst through the main entrance. Boss, our deal has been discovered. A gunshot rang out, and a huge crystal chandelier crashed to the floor with a thunderous noise. The entire hall was plunged into darkness, descending into chaos. Fearing I'd be caught up in it, I hid quietly in the corner, watching as police officers who had infiltrated the party subdued Zhao Run's men. Wei Wei. Finally, Fu Yun's voice reached my ears. Taking advantage of the darkness, he came to my side and whispered, the Zhao family's influence has been entrenched for many years. They might have other moves to make. Let's get out of here first. I nodded, my tense heart gradually easing. However, just as we were avoiding the chaotic crowd and heading to the garden, the night breeze carried a mix of unknown floral scents, and I suddenly smelled a peculiar odor. It was like a premonition from a past life. My pupils dilated, and I instinctively tackled Fu Yun to the ground, rolling quickly to the side. The next second, bullets stirred up dust where we had just been. I staggered to my feet, only to find myself targeted by a dark gun muzzle. It's really you. Song Xiao held the gun, looking at me with almost hateful eyes. Why do you keep sabotaging my career and opportunities if you claim to like me, if you admired me? You should have been willing to give without expecting anything in return, but while you say you like me, you only look down on me with pity. from your high pedestal, Meng Wei, you truly disgust me, even in another life. I was rendered speechless by Song Zhao's shameless words, so in the previous life, no matter how kind I was to him, pouring my heart and soul into helping him, he still saw it as an insult. He deeply believed that when I offered help, I shouldn't expect anything in return. Do I look like a sucker to you? His absurd logic infuriated me, and I couldn't help but say, we don't even know each other. I spent money to help you. You should be thanking me. If you feel humiliated, you could have thrown the money in my face and told me you could make it on your own without my dirty money, but you didn't. The truth is, even though you've secured Zhao Run's support, you still rely on working with my family to win the projects you want. Without my help, you're nothing. The more I spoke, the paler Song Zhao's face became, but he gritted his teeth and said, someone like you, born with a silver spoon, you just don't understand. It has nothing to do with background. Fu Yun suddenly chuckled, interrupting Song Xiao, blaming others and shirking responsibility. Even if you were born into our family, nothing would change, just like now. You've acknowledged your own father, yet you remain someone who can only advance by trading on looks. His gaze was contemptuous and unmasked, yet it seemed he was prepared all along. The moment Song Xiao lost his reason and fired the gun, Fu Yun swiftly pushed me aside. More than one gunshot rang out, bullets tore through flesh, bursting into a smoky bloom of blood. Drops of warm blood splattered on my face. All I could see was an overwhelming red and his slowly closing eyes. Fu Yun. In the hospital room, the smell of disinfectant overwhelmed the scent of lemongrass on Fu Yun. I sat by his bed, teeth clenched. Are you insane? His eyelashes trembled, and he looked at me with a tender gaze. I'm sorry, Wei Wei. I just wanted to test something. After all our efforts to escape that irresistible force, I wanted to see if your fate from a previous life would repeat itself. That was why he deliberately provoked Song Xiao to shoot at him. In reality, the police officers stationed nearby had already noticed the commotion and followed. The moment Song Xiao fired, they too pulled their triggers, hitting his wrist and temple. If the original plot's influence was inescapable, Fu Yun would have certainly died under Song Zhao's gunfire, but now, because the gun was misaimed, he was only injured in the shoulder. But there were many other ways to verify this, wasn't there? Did it have to be with your life? This was the most certain way? His lips were pale from blood loss, but his eyes never left mine for a moment. If I had really died, Song Xiao would undoubtedly be sentenced to death. You wouldn't have any further contact with him, nor would you be sent to a mental hospital. For the next few decades, you would have a peaceful life. Wei Wei, he paused, his voice even softer. It fell gently on my ears, yet seemed to carry the weight of thunder. I told you, I wouldn't let those things from your dreams happen. I stared blankly at Fu Yun, my throat choked by an invisible force, unable to speak. He was truly a bit mad, willing to gamble with his own life. If he won, it meant we both escaped the shadows of our past lives. If he lost, his death would secure a safe and peaceful life for me. I reflected on the medicine injected into me in a past life, and the sensation of falling from a tall building. I recalled the look in Fu Yun's eyes, tear-streaked, in the dimly lit private room. I remembered the flames that suddenly erupted at Song Zhao's grand wedding. I thought of the lemongrass scent that had clung to Fu Yun for over a decade, constant as the days. Overwhelmed with tears, I suddenly grabbed his shirt fiercely, leaned in, and bit down hard on his lips. The sweet, metallic taste of blood filled my mouth momentarily. That's not acceptable. I spoke deliberately. Your life belongs to me. All right, it's yours. Fu Yun's eyes, usually cold and detached, were now filled with a moist, tender emotion. Everything of mine belongs to you. Back then, Fu Yun found a way to connect with Zhao Yi to gather intelligence. Working with the police, they dismantled an arms deal worth over $1 billion for their involvement in organized crime, intentional murder, and illegal possession of firearms. Song Xiao and others including Zhao Run and Zhao Yi were sentenced to death. All the guests at the birthday dinner and Zhao Run's secret network were gradually being investigated. Although Su Wan had no direct involvement with the case, she was sentenced to 2 years for her auxiliary role. Meng's upcoming phases 2 and 3 of the project naturally continued in collaboration with the Fu Corporation, using work as a pretext. I suddenly found many opportunities to spend time with Fu Yun. Regardless of his attempts to seduce me, I consistently refused with a stern face. Your wounds haven't healed yet, we'll talk when they do. After speaking, I couldn't help but scold him, daring to drink with an unhealed gunshot wound. Do you have a death wish? His white shirt, soaked from the hot shower, clung to his body as Fu Yun opened his eyes, his pupils hazy with intoxication. A smile, indulgent yet helpless, curved his lips. I'm sorry, Wei Wei. He was tempting me again. I swallowed. feigning indifference as I handed him the shower head. Take your clothes off and bathe yourself, I'm leaving. I had only taken a few steps out of the steamy bathroom when I heard a heavy thud behind me. Hesitating, concern for Fu Yun prevailed. I turned and hurried back. As I bent down, he hooked his arm around my neck, pulling both of us into the large circular bathtub. With a splash, water flew everywhere. I couldn't help but scream. That was a custom-made dress I just received last week. I'll compensate you with 10 more tomorrow. His hot breath was close to my ear, growing hotter by the moment. Help me, Wei Wei. His kisses landed on my lips, grinding slowly until a stinging pain spread, reluctantly breaking away. Yet, carrying warmth, they trailed downward, disappearing under the water. How can I help you? My voice trembled sharply, swallowed by his fervent kisses. It's too hot. Help me cool down. Liar. How could I possibly cool him down? I could only follow his lead. Plunging into the steamy tropical rainforest together, then, a sudden downpour. With a cool touch, it streamed into the depths of the river. It was late into the night when I finally fell into a deep sleep. In a hazy dream, I couldn't tell if it was a past life or the present. It was a time before Song Xiao appeared. Wearing my high school uniform, I found a love letter from a boy in my bag. Then, like a film scene switching, the boy stood among a group of thugs, cigarette in mouth. Eyes filled with malice. What's so special about the Meng family's young lady? Once I trick her into a date and drug her drink, she'll be at our mercy. The next day, on his way to school, he was hit by a speeding car, breaking his leg. Inside the stark white hospital room, Fu Yun pushed the door open, his face expressionless as he looked at him. This is a warning. Harbor any more inappropriate thoughts, and next time, it won't just be a leg that breaks. Then the hospital door closed. He picked up the phone. On the other end, 17-year-old Meng Wei's spoiled voice came through. Fu Yun, my birthday is coming up. What gift have you prepared for me?